What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Game Night YouTube channel. In today's video, guys, I'm going to teach you how to play UnderQuest by Jason Glover of Grey Gnome Games. Guys, we're going to go over everything in today's video. This is going to be a jam-packed video. We're going to go over all of the contents of the game and show you all of the cards and the little components and everything that you get with the game. And I'm going to cover all of the rules so that by the end of this video, you will be able to go into the dungeons of UnderQuest as a professional, all by yourself, and play the game from start to finish. So guys, let's go ahead and get right into it, man. I've got everything laid out here on the table, pretty much set up where it's going to go. You might also notice too, I've got these two beautiful playmats right here for the game. So we've got sort of like a dungeon playmat over this way, and then like a player inventory playmat over on this side. And I also want to mention too, right out of the gate here, guys, the crowd sale for UnderQuest is going to be starting on November 6th. So that is tomorrow, guys. It'll start Thursday, November 6th. So be sure to head over to thegamecrafter.com. I will have links below in the description. Go ahead and click on those links and it'll take you straight to the crowd sale page so that you guys can go ahead and pledge for the game and get your copy of the game. So guys, let's go ahead and get right into this, man. We've got the beautiful box right here that the game is going to come in with stunning artwork on the front of the box, the UnderQuest logo up at the top. Jason absolutely knocked it out of the park with the artwork in UnderQuest. If you guys are familiar with Iron Helm, another one of Jason's games, then a lot of the things that you see here in UnderQuest are going to be kind of familiar. It's sort of like a spiritual successor to Iron Helm, so there's some similarities, but there's also a lot of brand new, really interesting mechanics and little, surprises for us along the way as well. And the artwork is incredible, guys. The artwork in Iron Helm was already awesome. It is insanely awesome here in UnderQuest. Jason stepped it up big time. Massive fan of his artwork, and this is just breathtakingly beautiful. It is so good. So we got the box here. On the back of the box, it gives you like a little synopsis of the game, a little bullet point list of some, neat features about the game. And yeah, it's got this awesome artwork here on the back as well. So this is the box. It's very sturdy, really thick cardboard. It's a really sturdy box. It says that it's a solo game. It takes about 90 minutes or so to play, a little bit longer than Iron Helm. It's a more deep, immersive experience. It's really awesome, and it's for ages 14 and up. So that is the box. I'm going to set the box off to the side. We'll put that over this way like so. Here we go. Cool. And then we've got the full color rulebook right here as well, guys. The rulebook, it has the same art that was on the cover of the box, and it is a full color rulebook. It is so good. It is really good. I know lots of times it's tough to make rulebooks, and yeah, Jason did a fantastic job with this rulebook, guys. It's got everything you need to know right here in this rulebook right here. It even has a character sheet in the back that if you want to make photocopies of and print out, some character sheets, you can do that for yourself. There's also going to be like a little notepad of character sheets like this that you can purchase during the crowd sale. If you kind of want to have that old school D&D feel of tracking your character like on a character sheet. So that is going to be an option for you as well. But there's a free one provided right here in the book, so you could always make copies of that. But yeah, like I said, full color rulebook. Absolutely amazing. Great stuff. He did a really great job with this. And what I'm going to do in today's video is essentially condense this down and go through it bit by bit and explain to you guys how all of the different mechanics and everything work in the game. Also, I do want to mention too, right out of the gate, if you decide not to get the playmats because they aren't necessary to play the game, although I do highly recommend it. No, that doesn't benefit me. I'm not trying to like sell you on them or pitch them to you or anything like that. It's just my honest opinion. They're really nice, and they make everything nice and it's just easy to set up. It makes it nice and convenient to set everything up, basically, because it's got all the slots for your different decks. Like if I move the Scourge deck here, it tells you on the mat, Scourges. Like it shows you right where everything goes. Really nice. But you don't need the mats, and if you don't want to get the mats, there is a page in the rulebook under the game setup section that shows you a way that you could set up the game. Now, feel free to set it up however you like, for the space that you have. But there is a nice little illustration here that shows you kind of, a recommended way to set up the game if you don't get the playmats. But again, highly recommend them. They're amazing. Jason did such a good job with the art on the playmats as well. I love it. So good. So we got the rulebook here. I'm going to set that off to the side as well. And we're going to go ahead and get into the components here, guys. So there's a bunch of cards and a bunch of little tokens. I'm briefly going to mention those, and then we're going to dive deep into each little deck of cards and all of the different mechanics in the game so that you guys can learn how to play. So first of all, let's go ahead and start with the decks of cards. So as you can see, there's a bunch of decks of cards over this way. We've got rewards, treasure, ingredients, trinkets, encounters, enemies, abominations, and scourges. We also have a dungeon deck down this way, which is sort of like the driving mechanic of the game. Again, if you're familiar with Iron Helm, you're already going to be very familiar with how this works. And if you're not, I'll teach you how it works soon enough. We also have a little boss deck over this way. There's not a dedicated spot on the mat for the boss deck, which I totally understand. It's just 3 cards, and the space is better utilized for other decks. So what I do is I just set them over here on the mat, right where the Doom Skull is in this doorway. So that's my little like boss deck section over that way. And then over here on this mat, we've got a few more decks of cards. We got the level cards here. So you're going to have these different level cards going from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down to this card here that says, "Time was your real enemy. You have failed your quest." So essentially there are 5 levels in the dungeon that you're trying to get through, and you're trying to complete quests and fight and kill the last boss, the final boss, before you get to the end of level 5. So this is sort of like a clock that you're on here. So you're kind of racing against time. Speaking of quests, you've got your quest deck here. You've got your trappings, your skills, familiars, and then you've got a little deck of 6 different races to choose from. And on the flip side, you have 6 different classes to choose from whenever you create your character. And then we've got an incantations deck here, which are spells. And again, guys, I'm going to teach you about all these decks individually, and we'll get to that soon enough. There's also some tracker cards that come with the game. So as you can see over here, there's a morality tracker. There is a tracker for your different types of damage, your normal damage, fire, ice, holy damage, and then how much armor you have, how much damage you're able to mitigate. There's also this tracker right here, which is a health tracker for the player. There's not a tracker to track your encumbrance, which is how much weight you can hold. So I get kind of crafty with this, and I just take this health tracker and I slide it underneath here, and I'm actually using this as my encumbrance tracker over this way. Also, there are a few other tracker cards that come with the game that I have set off to the side. There's this one that has grit and poison. There's this one with rations and gold. And then there's an experience and curses tracker. And also you get a bonus card in the game for Iron Helm. It is Grubrot. This is going to be the last card ever printed for Iron Helm. So you get a brand new character card, Grubrot, right here. Really, really cool. Kind of bittersweet, right? Kind of bittersweet, but there is Grubrot in the flesh right there. So if you want to add him to your Iron Helm collection, there you go. I'm going to set those off to the side, and then we're going to get into the other little components that we have here, guys. So there's a bunch of little tracking cubes right here. So we've got a red one here that I'm using for the enemy health. We've got some clear ones that you can use for your damage types. I'm using a white one for the morality tracker. I'm using a black one for my encumbrance tracker. And then there's also a few more little cubes in case you wanted to use those other tracking cards here rather than using the little chits and tokens up this way. So that is an option for you. It's got the other little tracking cubes in here and some baggies inside of this bag to house all of these components as well. Cool, so I'll set that stuff off to the side. And as I just mentioned, you can either use those tracking cubes and tracker cards, or you can use these chits up this way, and that's my preferred way of playing the game because it harkens back to Iron Helm, and in Iron Helm, you used little chits like this too, until Jason added the tracking cards with the Gnome Pack expansion, I believe it was. But I really like using the chits. It has a nice tactile feel to it, and if you prefer to do that, there's a bunch of them there for you. So you're going to get 23 of these health chits right here, these little health tokens. You'll get 12 grit tokens. Now, if you're familiar with Iron Helm, once again, I'm going to reference Iron Helm a lot, guys, because, you know, clearly UnderQuest is a successor to Iron Helm. It's sort of like, you know, Iron Helm 2.0, so to speak. So if you're familiar with energy in Iron Helm, grit is the new form of energy here in UnderQuest. So you're going to get 12 of those grit tokens. You get 11 poison tokens, 11 gold tokens, 5 curse tokens. You get 16 of these experience point tokens, 12 ration tokens, and then you get 8 of each of these quest tokens here. 8 combat quest tokens, 8 nature quest tokens, 8 mystic quest tokens, and then 8 wealth quest tokens right there. You're also going to get a couple of D6, just standard size D6. I can't remember the exact size off the top of my head. And you're also going to get a little mini D6 as well that's going to be used to track the morale of your companions, because in your adventures, you may come across companions that can join you. They're going to have a certain amount of morale that they need to have, and if it ever reaches 0, they'll leave you. So you need a way to track that with that little die right there. So that's basically it, guys. That's all of the components in the game. And then, of course, the playmats. But once again, you don't have to have the playmats. You can play the game without the playmats. So we're going to go ahead and get into the game setup now. So what you're going to want to do is shuffle up all of these decks over here, except for the rewards deck. The rewards deck is special. We'll talk about it more later, but I'll briefly mention that the rewards deck never needs to be shuffled because you're never going to draw cards from it randomly. You'll be instructed to go into the rewards deck and take out very specific cards as rewards for completing certain quests or particular encounters that you may come across. But all of these other decks over here, treasure, ingredients, trinkets, encounters, enemies, abominations, and scourges, you want to shuffle all of those decks before you begin the game. So this is the first phase of the setup of the game. So we'll go ahead and give all of these a little mix really quickly. And again, we're going to go through each of these decks in one by one, and I'm going to tell you how all of those work. So let's go ahead and get all of these mixed up like so. And as I mentioned earlier, the basic synopsis of the game, guys, is you're a little adventurer character that's heading out into a dungeon, and you're trying to fight monsters, you're gathering loot, you're going on quests, and with the ultimate goal of defeating the final boss of the game. So it's everything you would expect from a dungeon crawling experience. So we're going to shuffle all of these up. And this last deck right here. Now, the rest of the decks that are out on the table, including the rewards deck, the quests, the trappings, the skills, the familiars, obviously your race and class cards and the incantations, and then also your level trackers up here. You don't have to shuffle any of those. Those can just stay how they are. Next, you're going to take your 5 level cards here. So you've got your levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and you just want to make sure that they're in order from 1 down through 5, and then with your time was your real enemy card at the bottom there. So if you ever reach this, you have failed your quest and you lose the game. So we'll go ahead and set that over that way like so. And then the next thing you want to do is set up your quest deck, guys. So we're going to take our quest deck here. There's 18 cards in the quest deck, and you'll notice on the back of the quest card, the word quests will be bookended by a number. So we've got the number 1 here. There's going to be 3 cards that have the number 1, 3 cards with the number 2, 3 3s, 3 4s, 3 5s, and then 3 6s. Now what you want to do is one at a time, you're going to take the 6s. I like to do it in reverse order here. So we're going to take the 6s, give them a little shuffle. We're going to pick one at random, set it down, and set the other 2 off to the side. Then we're going to take the 3 5s, and we're going to do the same thing. And essentially what we're doing here is creating a unique narrative quest line that we're going to go on, and every time you play the game, it's going to be different. So you're going to have different quests that you go on. The story will line up differently each time you play the game and send you on, different little adventures. You'll take different routes, run into different characters, maybe get some companions, maybe find some special rewards along the way. So we'll mix these up. We've got a 3. I'll set this over this way. And doing it in reverse order like this, going from 6 down to 1, it just lets you conveniently stack them. So that way, when you're done, you're going to have 1 down through 6. We'll mix these, pick one at random. Boom, like so. So what I do is you could just take these and set them off to the side or put them back in the box. I actually just set these right here, the ones that I'm not using, back in the quest deck slot. And now we've got quest 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we're going to set these right on top like so. And our goal is to get all the way through to the 6th quest, complete the quest, and then it's going to allow us to face the final boss of the game and hopefully succeed. And we'll be able to move on with our adventure. Okay, cool. So we got the quest deck set up. Now we're going to go ahead and make sure that we have enough space to place all of our tokens and our dice and stuff like that. So, especially if you're not using the play mats, or even if you are, there's not necessarily spaces on the mats for the tokens. You'll see that there are spaces here for the tokens, but those are the tokens that you're actually using to keep track of your health and whatnot. So just make sure that you have a little bit of extra space off to the side where you can, put all your little tokens and dice and whatnot. And then you want to make sure that you leave some space for your character cards as well. So you're going to want to have a space for your race, your class, your familiar, and your companion. And on the mats, it's just conveniently laid out right here in this little slot up top. So make sure you have some room for your character. And then last but not least, guys, for the setup, we're going to take the dungeon deck, the 18 card dungeon deck, and we're going to give it a mix and just shuffle it up. And this is going to randomize the dungeon deck for our first level of the game. I'll also mention too, this video is going to primarily be a how to play tutorial video, not necessarily a full playthrough of the game. There will be many full playthroughs of the game coming to the Game Night YouTube channel, but I might go through like a level or so of the dungeon so that you guys can at least see these rules from the video in action. So, you know, I like to learn that way, to actually see it in action rather than just hearing about it sort of in a vacuum. It's nice to be able to see it all play out. Cool. So that is the setup, guys. The game is set up and ready to go. Now we need to create our character. So we're going to get into the character creation where we need to choose a race, a class, and a familiar. Now, if you want to, you can choose whichever of the 6 races you want. You'll notice too that on the front of a card is a race and on the back is the class. So certain races will not be able to be certain classes. So for instance, if you pick the Cremori, you can't be a ranger because it's on the flip side of the card. And Jason Glover says that he really likes this idea because it kind of harkens back to like old school computer RPGs and D&D where certain races couldn't be certain classes. So there's a little bit of a restriction there, but there's like a ton of characters that you could play as. I believe with all of the current characters, races, and familiars, I want to say there's a total of 180 different characters that you could play as, if I'm not mistaken. So the slight little, restriction is not going to hinder you at all, guys. There are tons, dozens and dozens of classes and races and characters to play as in the game. So you could pick whatever you want. You could pick your own class, your own race, and your own familiar. But what I like to do is I like to make it spicy. I like to shuffle it up and get a random one. So we're going to shuffle up and see what we get. We got the Norsean. Let's go. This guy's really, really cool. So we've got a Norsean. We're going to set him here on our race slot. Then we're going to shuffle up the rest of the cards, and we're going to flip over another one. And we've got a Conjurer. Ooh, very interesting. So we're a Norsean Conjurer. Conjurer is the class. Norsean is the race. I'm going to take the rest of the race and class cards and just set them underneath my Norsean here. Like so. And then we're going to take the familiars. You've got 6 different familiars, and these little guys are very interesting. You're going to have these 3 over here, the Cockeye, Glider, and Fink, are kind of like evil, devious familiars that will make you have negative morality on the morality tracker, which I'll explain to you soon. And then you've got the Howl, the One-Eyed Toad, and the Moon Rabbit that are more pious and positive little familiar companions that you could bring with you that will start you out with positive morality on the morality tracker. Cool. So we're going to go ahead and mix these up, and we're going to get one at random and see what we're going to get here. We got the Fink. Okay, we got the Fink. We're going to set him over this way. The artwork on these is beautiful. Also, I'm going to just place him on top of the rest and set them here. There we go. Okay, cool. So we've got our character basically set up over here. Now we need to go over all of the stats, and I'll teach you guys everything on the cards here, because you're probably wondering, what is all this information on the card? So let's go ahead and go over that. So first we got a race card. Of course, you've got the name up at the top, a nice little artwork right here. And then over here, this heart symbol tells you how many HP, how many hit points you get as this particular race. So as a Norsean, you get 10 hit points. The purple star icon is grit, so that's for the grit tokens over here. And grit is used to spend during combat in order to deal extra damage, which we'll get to soon enough. There's other times that you might need to spend grit for certain cards in the game. And then down this way, we've got the encumbrance. So this little gray hexagon here is your encumbrance. That shows how much weight you can hold. So for the Norsean, he can hold 8. And then down here, there's a special ability. So it gives you the special ability of the race card. In this case, for the Norsean, it says, whenever you successfully deal damage in combat, add 1 ice damage to your attack. And then down below, it says Trapping, Rusty Dagger. So there's a Trappings deck over here. You would go into the Trappings deck and take out the Rusty Dagger card. And then down at the bottom, it tells you your 3 stats. There are 3 stats in the game for each character: Agility, Brawn, and Mind. In the case of the Norsean, he has 2 Agility, 2 Brawn, and 1 Mind stat right there. Cool, so that is our character, our race card rather. Then we've got our class card over this way. It's got the name of the class up at the top, a little image showing some items that type of class would have. So we've got like a little sacrificial dagger. There's like a spell book, a scroll, because we're a conjurer after all. And then right here, it's going to tell you how much bonus HP you get. So we would get 2 extra HP. This is going to show you how much bonus grit you get. So 3 bonus grit, this little purple star icon. And then this golden coin is going to show you how many golden coins you get. So you would take that many gold tokens and add to your character. And then this little square right here is going to show how many rations you start the game with. And rations can be eaten, they have to be eaten actually, in between dungeon levels in order to gain 1 health and 1 grit back. And rations can also be eaten at any time in order to gain 1 health and 1 grit back. You don't have to choose 1 health or 1 grit. You get one of both anytime you eat a ration. And again, you must eat a ration in between dungeon levels whenever the dungeon deck runs out of cards. And we'll get into all that here too, into more detail on that. And then down below here, guys, this is bonus damage that you can deal. So you'll see a big like star here, a big gray star with a number in it. That's how much bonus damage you deal. And right above that, you'll see a little purple star icon that matches the grit icon. So if you spend 1 grit, you'll deal 2 damage. If you spend 2 grit, you'll deal 4 bonus damage. And if you spend 3 grit, you'll deal 6 bonus damage. So you kind of get to decide before you attack how much oomph you want to put into the attack, how much, extra strength you want to put into the attack to do some potential bonus damage. Then down below, it'll tell you what skill you start the game with. So in this case, we start with the skill Wizardry. And then down below that, it'll tell you the skill proficiency of your character, which in this case is Mind. Cool, so we'll go ahead and set that over this way. And your skill proficiency will come into play in several different ways throughout the game, which we'll get into. And then over this way, guys, we've got our familiar. So our familiar here is the Fink. It shows how much bonus health you get, 2 bonus health. Shows how much bonus grit you get, 1 bonus grit. And then this icon here shows you where you start on the morality tracker. So -1 on the morality tracker, and the morality tracker is over this way. So you would take your little cube, and you can see down here, there's a positive morality up here, then a 0 in the middle for neutral, and then there's negative down at the bottom. So we'll just go ahead and set this on the -1 since we start on -1. Then it'll tell you what ability that particular familiar has whenever you either gain or lose morality. In the case of the Fink, whenever your morality moves down on the morality tracker, you may remove a curse token. And then at the bottom, in the bottom left, it tells you what random item, what bonus item you start the game with. In the case of the Fink, you start with a random trapping. That is very powerful. And then in the bottom right, it gives you a +1 bonus to one of your 3 stats, either agility, brawn, or mind. And for the Fink, he gives you +1 to your brawn stat. Cool. So now let's put all of that information together and give our character all of the appropriate tokens here. So we've got our HP 10, +2 is 12, +2 is 14. So we're going to grab 14 of these health tokens. And again, I like to use the little health chits here. So I'm going to count out 14. That is 5 right there. That's 10. This is 12. And we'll grab a couple more. There we go. We've got 14 right there. Cool. And, also, like I mentioned earlier, if you don't like fiddling with these little tokens, you can always use the tracker cubes on the tracking cards, or you could use the character sheets and jot them down. Nice. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is get our grit. So we've got 6 grit, +3 is 9, +1 is 10. And there are 12 of these in the game, so I can just go ahead and leave 2 behind. And then we've got 10 tokens right there. Also with the playmats, I put my tokens that I have currently, my health on the left, and then this is a discard pile for whenever you lose health, and then same thing with grit. On the left is the grit that I currently have, and on the right is grit that I've spent. Okay, and then next, we've got 8 for our encumbrance, so we can hold up to 8 weight worth of items. So I'm going to track that with this tracker over here. Again, this is the player health tracker, but I just slide it underneath here and use it as my encumbrance tracker, and I'll use this little black cube to keep track of how much weight we're holding, up to a maximum of 8. You can't go above that as the Norsean. Then next, we've got how much gold we start with. We start with 3 gold coins, so we're going to grab 3 gold. Got 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to set those up over here. And then we start with 1 ration. Not much food. We're only starting with 1 ration over that way. Cool. And then we're going to check what other items we start with. So for the Norsean, it says Trapping Rusty Dagger. So we're going to grab the Trappings deck here. And we're going to search through it. And we're going to find the Rusty Dagger trapping. And there it is. So we get the Rusty Dagger. We're going to go over some of the stats on this card here so that you guys can see what this is. So on the Rusty Dagger, it has the name up at the top, nice little artwork. It's going to tell you how much it's worth. It's worth 1 gold. It tells you how much it weighs. It weighs 1. And then right here, it's going to tell you what item slot it goes in your inventory. If it says PH, that's primary hand, so you'd set it in your primary hand slot. If it says 2H, it means it's two-handed, and it's going to take up both your primary hand and your offhand slot, which means you would not be able to hold an offhand item if you had a two-handed weapon. If it says OH right here, that means that it's offhand, so it'll go in your offhand slot. If it says BD, that means it's a body item. It'll go on your body, typically armor. And then if it says HD, it means it goes on your head, and it'll go in your head slot here. And then finally, if it says AS, it means that it's an accessory, and it'll go in your inventory. And on the playmats here, you've got this big area down here, this big empty area where you can hold all of your extra items and accessories in your inventory. You can also store weapons and armor here that you don't currently have equipped. Of course, as long as you have the encumbrance capacity to be able to hold on to those. It's also worth noting, you can only equip 1 helmet, 1 primary hand item, 1 body item, and 1 offhand item, or 1 two-handed item at a time, but you can have as many accessories equipped in your inventory as you would like. Cool. And then on the Rusty Dagger, it'll tell you what it does. It'll have an ability. So for the Rusty Dagger, it says, once per dungeon level, you may throw your dagger, inflicting d6 plus agility points of damage. So you would roll a d6, you would add your agility to it, and it would deal that much damage. And then you may only retrieve your dagger after the combat is over. And then in the bottom left, it tells you what type of item it is. In this case, it is a weapon. And in the bottom right, it tells you what type of stat this weapon uses, agility or brawn. And that's going to come into play during combat because you'll get to add one of those stats to your damage as bonus damage whenever you use this particular weapon, either agility or brawn. Cool. So we're going to go ahead and, since it's primary hand weapon, place it in our primary hand slot. It weighs 1. So I'm going to set my cube to 1 on my encumbrance tracker. And I kept the trappings deck out because our familiar also gives us a random trapping. So we're going to shuffle up the trapping deck, and we're going to get a random trapping. And let's see what we get here. Nice. We got the Mossy Lantern. This is one of the best trappings in the deck. That is very, very lucky. We're going to set that up this way. So we got the Mossy Lantern. It's worth 2 gold. It weighs 1. So we're going to go up to 2 encumbrance. It says OH, so that means it's an offhand item. So we're going to put that over here in our offhand slot. And it says once per dungeon level, you may reveal both dungeon cards and resolve 1. Both cards should be considered as the first card drawn when resolving, and it is an accessory. So if you're familiar with the lamp from Iron Helm, this is the lamp from Iron Helm. It is very, very good. It lets you look at both dungeon cards and choose which way to go. And if you're not sure what that means yet because you haven't seen or played Iron Helm, that'll make sense soon enough, and you'll see why this is such a powerful item. So we're going to go ahead and put that over here in our offhand slot. Very nice. And then we're going to check out our class here. We start with the skill Wizardry. So let's grab our skill deck, and we're going to get out the skill Wizardry. Also, we should check here. Our skill proficiency is Mind. So we're primarily going to learn mind skills. It's going to be easier for us to learn mind skills, and I'll explain how that works soon too. So let's go ahead and find that Wizardry skill. Okay, we've got Wizardry right here. We're going to place this over this way. And I may as well mention now, it'll come up again later in the video, just to refresh you guys. So the way the skill proficiency works is whenever you learn new skills, you're going to spend experience points, which are these tokens here, and you'll gain experience points by fighting and defeating enemies in the dungeon. If you have 6 experience points, you can spend those to learn a skill from the skill deck that is of the same type that your skill proficiency is. So if we have a skill proficiency of Mind, we can learn a Mind skill for 6 experience points. If we wanted to learn a skill outside of our proficiency, so in this case either Agility or Brawn, since our skill proficiency is Mind, it would cost us 10 experience points to learn one of those skills. So that's a big way that your skill proficiency factors into the game. It's easier, obviously, for you to learn skills that are of your skill proficiency. Those will cost 6, and ones outside of the proficiency cost 10. Cool, so we've got the Wizardry skill here. It says, above all else, you desire to pursue knowledge, especially knowledge that is fantastical in nature. Gain the ability to cast all level 1 incantations. So that's this deck over here. We've got a deck of incantations, which are basically spells. So we just gain the ability to cast all level 1 incantations. Randomly draw 1 level 1 incantation to learn, and then look through the remaining level 1 incantations and choose a second one to learn. So we're going to take our skill card and we're going to place it here. It also tells you in the bottom right corner of the skill card what type of skill it is, either Mind, agility, or brawn. In this case, it is mind. So we get to take the 3 level 1 incantations. So I'll go ahead and teach you about incantations. It's actually getting a little bit ahead of my notes that I have for the video, but you know what? This is perfect. There's as good a time as any to get into it. So we just so happen to get a conjurer who gives you the wizardry skill. So if you look at the incantations, they'll have a name up at the top, and then it'll have a little artwork, and then it'll show you up in the top left the type of spell that it is. So there's basically 3 different types. There's ice, which will have the little blue, the blue icon with the snowflake. There's holy, which will have the purple icon with the skull. And then there's fire, that'll have the orange icon with the fire. And then in the top right, it'll tell you the level of the incantation. So this is a level 1, this is a level 1, and this is a level 1, and all of the rest of them are all level 2. Every other incantation currently in the base game of UnderQuest is a level 2. And this also serves as how much grit you need to spend in order to cast that incantation. So in the case of the level 1 incantations, it costs you 1 grit, so you'd have to spend a grit in order to cast it. And then for the 2s, you would have to spend 2 grit in order to cast it. And whenever you cast an incantation, you simply just flip it over to show that it's been exhausted, and you don't have it anymore. There's a few ways that you can refresh those, which we'll get into here soon. And then on the rest of the card, it'll have a couple of options sometimes that you can choose one of the 2 effects that you want the incantation to have, or other times it'll just give you a single choice, or not really a choice, just a single effect that it'll do, like on that one, or here, or here. So there's 4 different ones that have single, and then there's all the other ones that have 2 different options that you could choose. So that's the way the incantations work. So with the wizardry skill, we get to gain the ability to cast all level 1 incantations. So that's these 3 right here. So we're going to put the rest of these over this way, and then we get one at random with the wizardry skill. So we'll shuffle these up and pick one. So we got the magic lantern. That's cool. We got the mossy lantern, and then we got a magic lantern incantation. So we'll put that over here in our inventory area. And then we get to choose one also. So I'm going to go ahead and choose ice arrows. We'll just pick that one. Now, obviously, whenever you play the game, you're going to want to read through these and choose one that's more beneficial for you. But for the purposes of the tutorial, we'll just kind of go through this. And then you would check out your incantations and see what they do. For instance, for the ice arrows, deal ice damage to an enemy equal to double your mind skill, or you may slow your enemies by lowering their initiative by a sum equal to your mind skill. Or for our magic lantern, when cast, you may reveal both dungeon cards and choose one to resolve. Both cards should be considered as the first card drawn when resolving. That's the same thing that our mossy lantern does. Or you may avoid a combat with an enemy that is weak to fire and has 5 or less base health. You gain 0 experience or treasure when you avoid an enemy. So as you can see, the effects and abilities of these incantations are very varied, and they'll come in handy if you use them very strategically and at opportune times, especially since once you use these, they get flipped over and spent. Now, there are a few ways that you can get these back. One way is if you beat the game. So if you go all the way through the dungeon and you defeat the game and you decide to continue your adventure, which is an option that you have in UnderQuest, you can go back to the Lonely Troll Inn and continue your adventure. You will get to refresh all of your incantations that you spent that game. The second way that you can refresh them is sometimes you might run into encounter cards, such as Sortab. There is that's one that I can think of off the top of my head. Let's see if we can find Sortab in here and see where he is hiding out. Where's Sortab? There he is. He was right on the top. He was right on the top waiting for us. So Sortab will let you recharge. You may reactivate a spent incantation, along with a couple other choices that he gives you. But so you'll run into certain cards that will let you reactivate your incantations. And also, when you have the wizardry skill, it unlocks, it mentions this in the rulebook. It doesn't say it on the card, but it does say in the rulebook, it unlocks a special 4th option that you can choose when you're at the campsite. So we're going to look through the dungeon deck and find the campsite card. So normally when you visit the campsite, you can cook, rest, or search. Well, the wizardry skill unlocks a hidden 4th choice that you can make, and you can eat 1 ration in order to reactivate one of your incantations. So those are the 3 ways. Either you beat the game and refresh all of them, either you find someone like Sortab in an encounter that allows you to refresh one, or when you have wizardry, whenever you go to the campsite, you have that 4th hidden ability or choice to eat a ration and refresh one. It's also worth mentioning too, if you choose that choice at the campsite, that is your choice for the campsite. You can't also choose one of the other choices on the card. Cool. So that's how the incantations work. That's cool. Like I said, we got a little ahead of myself here because we wound up with the wizardry skill, but that's all good. Now you guys know how the incantations work, which is excellent. And that is pretty much it, guys. I think our character is basically set up. We got all of our stuff, right? We got all of our tokens set up here. We've got our skills set up. We've got our trappings that we started with, the rusty dagger, and then the random trapping from the Fink. And then, of course, the Fink is giving us +1 brawn. So now our stats are 2 agility, 3 brawn, and 1 mind. So we're very strong and pretty agile, but not very cunning. Not very cunning and wise. So yeah, and you're going to find whenever you play the game, these stats will come into play at different times. You'll have different checks, skill checks that you need to make, which we'll go over, and you'll see how all that stuff factors in. Cool. It's also worth mentioning too, with the rations, like I mentioned earlier, you have to eat one between every level. If you're not able to, you take 3 damage. You lose 3 health. So you really want to make sure that you have rations on you pretty much at all times. And again, you can also eat a ration at any time during the game to gain a health and a grit. And also when you eat a ration in between levels, that mandatory ration that you have to eat between levels, it restores a health and a grit. Also worth noting too, you'll gain experience point tokens during the game, as I mentioned earlier, when defeating enemies, and those can be spent to learn new skills, as I mentioned, either 6 for a skill that's of your same skill proficiency that's printed on your class card, or 10 experience points to learn a skill outside of your proficiency, and obviously you would discard those experience points when you spend them to learn a new skill. But they also have a secondary function in that you can spend an experience point by discarding it to re-roll 1 or more dice for any roll in the game. So that's a combat roll for either you or the enemy. If you're rolling to make a skill check, if you're rolling for initiative, any die roll in the whole game, you can spend 1 experience point to re-roll the dice. So as long as you have experience points, you can keep spending them to re-roll dice. Just keep in mind, they are a valuable resource because they go toward earning you new skills, but that is a cool secondary feature that they have. You might be in a really dire situation where you're about to lose the game, and being able to re-roll is a matter of life and death. So the tokens will definitely come into play in those clutch situations like that. So yes, that's like a little obscure rule, but I wanted to mention that. Now we're going to get into exploration, guys. So this is kind of like the core of the game. Again, if you're familiar with Iron Helm, you're going to be very familiar with how this works. So let's go ahead and get into how this works here. So we've got our dungeon deck right here. Our 18 card dungeon deck. We've already gone ahead and shuffled it up. And what you're going to want to do is set your dungeon deck so that you have some space to the left of it for a discard pile, and then 2 spaces to the right for doors that you're going to choose between, because this is basically like a choose door number 1 or door number 2 situation. So you're going to take the top 2 cards of the deck, set them off to the right side, and then you've got a choice. Do you want to go to door number 1 or door number 2? So you'd pick one, you'd flip it over, and then you would see what the card is. We found a really nasty card right here, guys. We found a really, really nasty card. And actually, before we get to this, there's 2 different types of cards in the deck that I want to explain to you guys about. So this is one right here. Let's see if we have the other one here. We don't. We're going to reshuffle. Again, this is all for the purposes of the tutorial. So you've got basically 2 different types of cards. You'll have a card like this, like the Exalted Foe, that just has a little block of text, and you just do what it says, whether or not you flip it as the first card or the second card. And I should explain. Whenever you flip a card over, you have the choice to either resolve that card or discard it and flip the next card, in which case you would have to choose the next card. This, unfortunately, isn't the greatest example because this is the only card in the dungeon deck that says this card must be resolved if revealed. So let's put this one back. And we'll pick a different one as a better example for now. Let's see if I can get another one here. There we go. So let's say we flipped over the merchant. If we chose to do the merchant as the first card, you would just do whatever the card says. If we happen to flip this card first and we're like, no, I want to push my luck and go the other way, you'd flip it over and you'd still just do whatever it says. In the case of these cards that have the number 1 and the number 2 on them, if you flip one of these cards as the first card and you decide to resolve it, then you read the text that's next to the number 1 and you resolve that text, and you just ignore the rest of the text that's next to the number 2. If we were to flip over this card and we're like, no, I don't want to go to the merchant. I want to push my luck. I'm going to discard it and go to the next card. You flip it, and now you have to do what's next to the number 2 right here. You have to resolve that text, which is Typically, if it's a bad card like a skirmish, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for you to deal with. Or if it's a good card like the treasure card, you'll get even more rewards if you push your luck into it. So there's a high risk, high reward, push your luck mechanic in the game. Again, just like an Iron Helm, if you're familiar with that. So those are the two types of cards. The cards that'll either have a 1 or a 2, depending on if you resolve it as the first or second card. And then cards that don't have the 1 or 2 that you'll just resolve the same way, whether it was the first or second card. Cool. So let's go ahead and give it another little mix. We'll mix it up again. We lucked out, guys. We got to avoid that Exalted Foe. That was going to be gnarly. And I'll teach you guys about that card soon enough, too, because it is a very special card. Cool. So you would take the top 2 dungeon cards, you'd set them off to the side, and very first thing you're going to want to do before you even start exploring the dungeon is you need to find out what your quest is, guys. So you remember when we made our quest deck over this way? You're going to take the top card of the quest deck, and you're going to flip it face up, and you're going to read the top portion of the quest card. So you're going to have the name of the quest up at the top. You'll have a little block of text up here that you're going to read initially, and then you're going to have these 3 little icons in the middle of the card. These are the quest tokens that you need to acquire in order to progress and complete the quest, and then you'll be able to read the bottom half of the card. And as you can see, that's the same as these quest tokens up this way. So we've got a nature quest token, a mystic quest token, and a combat quest token. So once we acquire one of each of those, we could discard those and spend them in order to complete this quest, and I'll teach you guys how you acquire those in just a moment here. So for our quest here, it says, speak to Zola. You have been instructed to meet up with the renowned rogue Zola, who is waiting to meet with you in an abandoned dwarven storehouse, which is said to be near the entrance to the Black Mountains. With uncertainty as your sole companion, you make your way into the crags. Okay, so we're going to try to go meet up with Zola, who I believe was the archer from Iron Helm, which is really cool if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, so we're going to go to the Black Mountains to go meet up with Zola. Really cool. So that's our current quest. So in order to complete it, like I said, we need to gain one of each of these 3 quest tokens that are listed on the card. And then once we do that, we'll be able to read the rest of the quest and move on to the second quest in line here. Cool. So that is our current quest. We know what we're trying to do. We've got the narrative storyline set up here. This is the beginning of our adventure. So then you would lay down the 2 cards. You'd flip one, and you decide if you want to resolve the card or if you want to push your luck into the second card. Now, we got a treasure chest, guys. That's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and resolve this. So since it's the first card we're resolving, you look at the number 1. It says you open the chest to find it is almost empty. Gain 1 trinket. So we would get to gain a trinket card over here. So we would take the trinket, we would see what the trinket is, and we would add it into our inventory over this way. So essentially, we're going to go over all of these decks individually here. So I'm just going to set this over here for now. We're not going to get into too much detail with this. We'll continue talking about the exploration. Essentially, what you're going to want to do, guys, is once you complete the resolution of a card, you're going to take the other card, put it in this discard pile off to the left of the dungeon deck. And unlike in Iron Helm, where you would also discard their cards that you resolve, the card that you choose to resolve, whether the first or second card, is going to get placed up here on this tableau. This is called the tableau. And you'll notice that on the left and right side of each of these dungeon cards is half of an icon. And those icons are the quest token icons up this way. So your goal is to try to connect icons to create the full image of the icon. And whenever you do that, you'll get one of the quest tokens. So let's keep going and see if we can get another card out on the table here. Let's try to get a good example of it. Okay, we got the skirmish. We can't connect it to make a symbol here because you see they're different and it's different here. Now you don't have to. You could always just choose to resolve this card if you want to, but let's say that we don't want to. Let's say we don't want to get in a skirmish. I'm going to push my luck. So we would flip this card face down, put it in the discard pile, and now we're going to have to resolve whatever this card is. So we'd flip it over, and it is the campsite. Perfect. So as you can see, it doesn't have a 1 or a 2, so you would just resolve the card as normal, whether it was the first or second. So you have found a relatively quiet spot to set up camp, but you shouldn't linger for too long. Pick one action below. So we can either cook, rest, or search, or as a wizard, we could refresh one of our incantations since we have that hidden refresh ability. So you would pick one of those. In this case, we don't really need anything because when you cook, you spend a ration to gain grit, or when you rest, you spend a ration to gain health or remove a poison, or you could search, which says you can gain 1 ration and then roll a d6 to see what else you find. If you roll a 1, you get nothing. If you roll a 2 to 3, you get 1 trinket. And if you roll a 4 to 6, you get 1 ingredient. So in this case, we would say, let's search. So we would gain a ration. And then we would also get one of these extra items down below. So we roll. we rolled a 2. If you get a 2 to 3, you get a trinket. So we would also add another trinket over here to our inventory. And this is now a good time to mention this. So trinkets and ingredients, so you've got your ingredient cards here, your trinket cards here. They don't have a weight listed on them to go toward your encumbrance. So the way that these work is for every 2 ingredients or trinkets that you have, they weigh 1, and it'll increase your encumbrance by 1. So in this case, we've got 2 of them, so it goes up by 1. So if you had 2 trinkets, that weighs 1. If you had 2 ingredients, that weighs 1. Or if you had 1 ingredient and 1 trinket, that also weighs 1. It's also important to note too, if your encumbrance is ever maxed out, in the case of the Nortian, he can hold up to 8. If we were all the way up on 8 encumbrance, you cannot pick up any more trinkets or ingredients, even if it's only a single trinket or ingredient, which on its own doesn't add up to 1 weight. You still can't pick it up anyway. When you're maxed out encumbrance, that's it. You can't carry anything else at all. Cool. Okay, so next thing we would do is take this card since we've resolved it, and then we can place it either to the right or the left on the tableau. So if we place it on the left, the symbols aren't going to match up. We don't really want that. So we're going to place it over here on this side, and check it out, guys. We've completed a symbol. The little potion symbol right there is the Mystic Quest token. So now we can take one of these Mystic Quest tokens, and we're going to place it right here on the mat. So we've got a little nice little slots right here for our quest tokens that we can place right here. And if we reference our quest once again, you can see we need a Nature, Mystic, and Combat quest token. So we're 1/3 of the way there, guys. We've got a Mystic Quest token. And again, our goal is to gain all 3 of those so that we can read the bottom portion of the quest right there. So you're going to continue through the deck like that, exploring, and essentially you're going to go through the whole thing until you get all the way to the last 2 cards in the deck, and that will be your 9th decision. So there are 18 cards in the deck, which is going to give you 9 decisions to make here. So if we just simulate it real quick, let's say that we chose this one, you'd put it on the board. We'll just go through them. You chose this one. We got 2 more. We'll pick this one. And we'll just go through like this. And by the end of it, you're going to have 9 cards on the board. We're down to our last 2. And you'll have 9 cards out on the tableau. Obviously, you're going to be resolving the cards, trying to connect them and earn your quest tokens. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Once you get to this point, this is going to be the end of the level. So you'll finish the level once you get through the whole deck. When you finish the level, there's a few things you need to do. First thing you're going to do is gather up all the cards on the tableau, all 9 of them, and then all 9 of the cards that you discarded, and you're going to shuffle them together to form a new dungeon deck. So you'd mix them together, form your new dungeon deck, place it back right here, and then you need to feed your character in between levels. So you would have to spend one of your rations right here. You'd place it over here in the discard pile. If you were missing any health or grit, let's say that we had taken some damage and maybe lost some grit along the way, you would get to restore 1 health. You would also gain 1 grit for eating. If you didn't have any rations, if you were completely out of rations at this point and you have to eat one between levels, you would actually take 3 damage. So you would take 3 of your health tokens, and you would have to take 3 damage in that case. So you want to have rations on you all the time. And then also, guys, if you have a companion, let's go in the reward deck and take out a companion as an example. So let's say we had Mildred the cow here as our companion. You need to feed your companion as well between each dungeon level. So if you had a ration, you would have to feed your companion, and they will stick around with you. If you don't have a ration, or if you choose not to feed your companion, they're going to split. They're going to take off, and they're going to abandon you and head back to the reward deck over this way. And you'll be on your own once again. Cool. So yeah, if you have a companion, you also have to feed them too, which makes it pretty tough to keep up with. So again, you're going to want to try to keep rations on you as much as possible. Next thing you're going to want to do after you shuffle the deck and feed yourself and feed your companion if you have one is check to see if you have any poison tokens. So for every 2 poison tokens that you have on your character, you're going to get a 3rd poison token added to you. So if you only had 2, you would add 1. Let's say that you're very unfortunate and you happen to have 4 poison tokens on you, you would get 2 more poison tokens, because for every 2 that you have, you get an extra poison. And if your poison level ever equals or exceeds your current health, you die of poison and lose the game. So you don't want to get poison tokens at all. It's very, very bad, but there are multiple ways to reduce those, like eating at the campsite. Certain potions will be able to reduce poison and other things like that. So just to kind of go over that real quick. Once again, you're going to shuffle the dungeon deck. You're going to feed yourself, you're going to feed your companion, and then you're going to check to see if you gain any extra poison, 1 poison for each 2 poison tokens. And then finally, you're going to take the top card of the dungeon trackers here, and you're going to set it either on the bottom or discard it off to the side. I just set mine on the bottom. And then you go down to the next level of the dungeon. You'd set it there, and you are ready to go, guys. That is it. You're ready to go once again through the dungeon deck, and you continue doing that over and over, going through each level of the dungeon until you get down to dungeon level 5. And if by the end of dungeon level 5, if you go through the whole dungeon deck at the end of dungeon level 5 and you have not completed all 6 quests and defeated the boss, then time was your real enemy. You have failed your quest and you lose the game. All right. So you don't want that to happen. You definitely don't want that to happen. It's sort of like a race against the clock to get all of that done. Cool. So you've got the quest deck like we've already went over. We've mentioned that, guys. You know how the quest deck works. You're going to set up a thematic quest each time by picking one of 3 of each of the quest cards from 1 through 6. So it's going to be different each time you play. You'll have a different narrative and story to go through. And now we're going to talk about stat checks. So many times in the game, you're going to have to make a stat check. So let's see if we can maybe find an encounter card that tells you to make a stat check. Here we go. Here's a perfect example right here. The old bridge. It says an old tattered bridge stands before you with bats circling in the air above. It stretches across a deep chasm. You must make your way across. Make an agility check. If you fail, gain 1 poison. If you succeed, you gain 1 wealth token. Very, very nice. Or 1 wealth quest token, which is the blue quest tokens over here. So anytime the game asks you to make a skill check, whether it be agility, brawn, or mind, essentially what you're going to want to do is very simple. You're going to take 1d6, you're going to roll it, and you are going, wow, we got lucky, we got a 6, and you're going to add the particular stat of the skill check. So in this case, make an agility check. So we've got 2 agility, and keep in mind, you're going to want to check to see if your familiar adds a bonus +1 to that particular stat. In the case of the Fink, we get +1 brawn, so not our agility. You might also want to check any other gear or items that you have equipped or in your inventory that add any stats to your character. We don't have any of that in this case. So for us, we got a 6, plus our 2 agility is 8, and we have passed the check because the goal is always 7. So just remember, for skill checks, lucky number 7. You're always trying to reach the number 7. And this makes it to where even if you have a stat that only has a 1 in it, like mind, you can always roll at least a 6. So you'd have to roll a 6 in order to add the 6 to the 1 and reach that magic number of 7 in order to pass the skill check. So if you reach 7 or higher, you pass the check, the skill check. If you fail and you get 6 or less, then you fail, and you just do whatever it says on the card. Like in this case, if you fail, you gain 1 poison. But if you succeed, you gain 1 wealth quest token. So in this case, we would gain one of these wealth quest tokens, and we get to add this over here toward our quest, which is really nice. It's also worth mentioning at this point too, that quest tokens, their main function is to complete quests, obviously, but they also have a secondary function similarly to the experience points icons, which I mentioned earlier, or experience points tokens rather, that could be spent on skills, or you can discard them to reroll dice. With the quest tokens, you can discard a quest token to gain 2 experience points. So maybe you've got like a bunch of quest tokens of a particular type that you don't necessarily need, or maybe you do need it, but you really want the experience so that you can gain a new skill, or maybe have some experience to reroll some dice. You can discard 1 quest token to gain 2 experience. So if we discarded both of these, if we wanted to, we'd gain 4 experience points. So that's another little secondary function of the quest tokens. That's pretty interesting. Cool. So that is how checks work. You're also going to, or skill checks rather, you're also going to see those on enemies. There's going to be certain enemies that tell you to make certain skill checks. Let's see if we could find one in here. Like for instance, the white, it says before combat, make a mind check. And if you fail, you lose 1 grit. So like for us, we have only got a mind of 1. So we got to hit lucky number 7 here, guys. So we need a 6 and nothing but a 6. And we didn't get it. We rolled a 4 plus our 1 mind is 5. We didn't hit 7, so we failed. So in this case, we would end up losing 1 grit before the combat starts. So that is how skill checks works. Pretty straightforward. Really cool little mechanic. It's going to come up a lot in the game. So just remember, you're always trying to roll 7, essentially. Next, we're going to check out the inventory, guys. So I mentioned earlier in the game, you've got this big space down here for your inventory. And just to reiterate, you can carry as many accessories as you want, and you can carry weapons and armor and gear in your inventory. They don't have to be equipped to you. So if we wanted to, we could unequip the rusty dagger and put it down here and carry it in our inventory. We wouldn't want to do that, but if we wanted to, maybe we had a backup weapon or something, you can hold it in your inventory. You just have to make sure that you have the carrying capacity, the encumbrance to do it, that's listed here on your character card. And also, whenever you get companions, such as Mildred here, they'll also add to your carrying capacity. Like right here, it says 3. That'll add to your carrying capacity. Cool, so I'll set that back over this way. So that's pretty much it for the inventory. I also talked to about how every 2 ingredients and trinkets that you have is going to add 1 weight to your inventory. So just keep that in mind as well, guys. Cool. Okay, we're going to move on here, and we're going to talk about crafting potions. There is an alchemy system in the game. It is a very, very cool new mechanic that has been added into UnderQuest that was not in Iron Helm. So it mainly focuses on this ingredient deck right here, guys. So let's go ahead and talk about how this works. So you've got all of these ingredients here, a bunch of ingredients. Let me know how many we got. We got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 16. We've got 17 ingredient cards right here, dudes. A bunch of different cool things you could get. It reminds me of stuff that like a witch would be like stirring around in a cauldron to make a witch's brew. We got nether cabbage, a skinkling heart, a lizard foot, thistle bloom, a harpy fig, a serpent's eye, dusk beetle, a unicorn horn, that's got to be rare, an ogre's toenail, that is disgusting, a cavern zolia, it's a mushroom, fresh blood, human bone, a goblin's toe, gross, a mermaid's tongue, and a wisp essence. So a bunch of little weird items that you could combine to make potions. So let's go ahead and talk about how this works, how you craft potions in the game. So it's important to note too, whenever you want to craft a potion by using alchemy and combining your ingredients, you can only do it in between turns. So you cannot be in the middle of combat. You can't be resolving a dungeon card. You have to do it in between. And it makes sense thematically. You would need to kind of have like some peace and quiet to go off and combine your ingredients to make a potion. So you can only do it in between turns, never when resolving a card or in combat. So let's say that we go ahead and we'll just draw a couple of random ingredients here, and we'll take a look at these. So the way it's going to work, guys, and of course you're going to hold these in your inventory, and just like the trinkets, the ingredients also, for every 2 that you have, they weigh 1. And again, the same thing, like if you had 1 ingredient and 1 trinket, that also weighs 1. So the way these work is you're going to line them up like this. And let's take a look at sort of the layout of the card first before we do that. You got the name of the card up at the top, in this case, Human Bone. Got the little artwork of the card. And then up in the top left, it'll have these little white pips. This is the difficulty level of this particular ingredient. And whenever you're trying to create this potion, you're going to look at the difficulty level of both of the ingredients. You always use 2 ingredients to combine. In this case, you got 2. And 2, that is 4. So that would be the difficulty level of the potion. We're trying to roll 4 or better in that case. But with these 2 ingredients, it's not quite that simple. So you'll notice down below, there are some symbols down here. So there's going to be 5 different types of symbols. Let me go through these and see if I can get the other one so that you guys can see the other symbol. There we go. Okay, so the different types of symbols are going to be hearts, which are going to restore your HP. If it's got the little poison drop, that's going to remove poison. If it's got the cross, that is going to remove curses. Now, we haven't talked about curses yet, but I guess now is as good a time as any. We'll go ahead and briefly mention that. The game comes with these 5 curse tokens. Different enemies or maybe different encounters that you run into might give you curses. If you ever gain 5 curse tokens, you're going to have to draw one of these Scourge cards here, and they're basically like afflictions from Iron Helm, if you're familiar. They just give you nasty debuffs that you have to deal with that are really gnarly. Like, for instance, Gluttony. At the end of each level, you must consume 2 rations instead of 1. You must also take the cook action when you resolve the campsite. So it's just really frustrating, things that you have to deal with, these Scourges. You really don't want to get these. And again, you get a random Scourge whenever you collect 5 curse tokens. You'll discard the curse tokens and get a random Scourge. But with this cross here, that will remove curses from you. So that's health, poison, and curses. And then you've also got the purple star right here that will give you grit. And then lastly, the 5th one is the little mushroom that will give you rations. Cool, so I'll set this back over this way. And so the way this works, guys, is you can see these little red arrows here, and you've got 3 lines of icons. What you're trying to do is line up the rows so that you have the same type of icon in the row. As you can see here, we've got hearts and hearts, so we would have to line those up in order to make a potion that will heal us for 4 hearts. But it's not as simple as just moving them wherever you want. So first, the ingredients have to start next to each other like this. And then if you shift them by 1, that's going to add 1 to the difficulty. And then if you shift it again so that you can get these to line up, that's going to add another 1 to the difficulty. So now that's 2 extra difficulty on top of the 2 from each ingredient for a total of 6. 2, 2, and then 2 for moving these 2 spaces. So the difficulty of crafting this potion is going to be 6. Now what you do is you take a d6, you'd roll it, and you add your mind skill to it. As a Norsean, we only have 1 mind, so he's not that great at alchemy. So making potions is definitely going to be more feasible for characters that have, 2 or 3 mind stat. But you could still pull it off with 1 mind characters. It's just going to be a little more difficult for them to do. But they make up for it by having, more brawn and agility. So every character's got their strengths and weaknesses. So what you would do is you'd go ahead and roll. Again, we're trying to reach 6 or better. And then you'd add your mind stat to it. So we got a 3 plus 1 is 4. So we failed to make the potion. So you would take the 2 ingredients and you would discard them. Let's say that we got lucky and we happened to create the potion. We rolled high enough to create the potion. You would gain the reward here. So we would immediately gain 4 health. We would get to take 4 of our health tokens and replenish them, and then you would discard the ingredients. So either way, whether you fail or succeed, you're going to discard the ingredients. There's also another neat little mechanic here with the alchemy, and it comes in the form of being able to craft exquisite potions or failing horribly and having to pay a penalty for trying to craft the potion. So if at any time you roll a 6, no matter what, if you roll a 6, you automatically succeed at crafting the potion, and it's an exquisite version of that potion. So in this case, if we did this and we got the hearts here, we would get 4 hearts. And not only that, if you look at the bottom of the cards, it says risk and reward. So whenever you create an exquisite version of the potion, you get to choose the reward of one of these 2 cards. So you get to choose. So in this case, if we did the human bone, reward would be remove 1 curse token. So if we had any curse tokens, we'd get to remove 1. Or if we chose the fresh blood, reward, keep one of the other ingredients used to craft this potion. So that would mean we'd get to keep the human bone because it's the other ingredient used to craft the potion. So very, very cool that you can get a bonus reward if you roll a 6, and it's an automatic success. If you ever roll a 1, not only do you fail, but there's a risk involved. So in this case, you don't get to choose the risk like you get to choose the reward. You'd have to take the 2 ingredients, you'd mix them up, you'd flip it over, and then you'd have to suffer the risk. In this case, gain 1 curse token. So we would have to gain a curse token. Or if we got the other one, gain 1 curse token. So either way, we'd be gaining a curse token in this situation. So yeah, guys, so that is basically how alchemy works. It is a really, really neat mechanic. Very, very fun. Also worth mentioning too, that if you ever have icons that match up in multiple levels, like in multiple rows, you can't get all of them. You can only choose 1 row. So you'd have to choose one of those rows to make the potion. So let's see, like for instance, here's another one. We can do this. I don't even know if that can physically happen on the cards, honestly, but it does mention it in the rulebook. I haven't seen it come up in the game yet. So like for these ones, none of these symbols match up. We got food and grit. We got grit and poison. We got poison and food. But if we move these like this by 1 space, now we've got grit. So we'd be able to gain 4 grit. The difficulty of the harpy fig is 3. The difficulty of the serpent's eye is 2. So that's 5. And then we moved them 1. So that adds 1 to it and brings it up to 6. So once again, we would have to roll 6 or better, and you add your mind stat to it when rolling. If you roll a 6, you automatically succeed. It's an exquisite potion. You get the reward of one of the cards you get to choose. And if you get a 1, you fail. You got to shuffle them up, pick one at random, and get the risk. So that is it. That is it summed up right there. That is how the potion mechanic works and the alchemy mechanic works. Very interesting. You're still going to find potions and whatnot throughout the game, but I think that it's really cool that there's also like a potion crafting system in the game too, which is really, really nice. Next up, guys, we're going to briefly look at the treasures and trappings. There's a few different things to look at, like daggers, the mimic card, and some traps. So We'll kind of go over the layout of these cards. So we've got a treasure card here. We'll just go ahead and grab, we'll just grab this one. We'll grab out the Mimic as well. We'll take a look at that, and we'll take a look at the arrow trap. Here's the arrow trap here. Cool. Let's set these over this way. We'll also take out a trapping card as well. Let's grab, well, we've got the rusty dagger here. That is a trappings card, so that's a good representation. So essentially, most of the cards in the treasure and trappings deck are going to be like these two, like the bone breaker here and the rusty dagger. It'll tell you how much gold they cost up in the top right. Whenever you're at the merchant in the Lonely Troll Inn and you're able to buy trappings, which I forgot to mention, you're actually able to do that before the game starts. When you're creating your character, you can actually spend your gold in order to buy trappings from the merchant. So that's important. So don't forget that you have that option. You don't have to. You could just go into the dungeon with your gold, but you can look through the trappings deck, and then you would pay the amount of gold that's listed right here. Then it tells you how much the item weighs. In the case of the Bone Breaker, it weighs 3. So if we picked up the Bone Breaker, we would increase our encumbrance by 3 over here on our tracker. If we picked up the Rusty Dagger, we'd increase it by 1 where it was before. Cool. And then down here, it tells you what, where the slot is in your inventory that it takes up. So primary hand for the Rusty Dagger, it says 2H. Again, that means two-handed for the Bone Breaker. So if we did have the Bone Breaker, that would mean that we could not hold the Mossy Lantern in our offhand because this is a two-handed item. And we're human, and we've only got 2 hands, so we can only hold the Bone Breaker. And then it'll tell you what the item does. Like the Bone Breaker says add 4 holy damage to all your successful hits in combat. And then in red, sometimes I'll have some red text, which is kind of like a drawback or like a stipulation. It says it cannot be used if you have 0 or less morality. So in this case, we've got -1 morality. We couldn't even use the Bone Breaker even if we had it. We could hold on to it in our inventory and maybe try to increase our morality in the hopes of being able to use it, but currently we wouldn't be able to use it. And then down in the bottom right of each of the cards, it'll tell you the type of item that it is, in this case a weapon in both cases, and then it'll tell you the stat that you use to add bonus damage in combat, which we're going to get into here pretty soon. So brawn for the Bone Breaker, and then agility or brawn for the Rusty Dagger. So again, most of the items in the treasure deck are going to have that layout, and there's other items that aren't weapons. For instance, like the compass, that's how much it costs, that's how much it weighs, and it's an accessory, so it just goes in your inventory. You can have as many accessories as you want. Spend 1 less ration when you encounter the labyrinth, so when you find the labyrinth in the dungeon deck, you'll spend 1 less ration than normal, and it is an accessory. So yeah, and there's other things you can get in here, guys. All kinds of stuff. There's rings, there's more weapons, tunic, so it's an armor that would go on your body, and they all do different things, have different values and different weights, and all that jazz. So pretty self-explanatory, pretty much what you'd expect of loot, of treasure in the treasure deck and the trapping deck. But there are a couple of special cards that are in that treasure deck that you might run into that are a bit unsavory, and one of them is the Mimic. So the Mimic is an enemy. It's got health. It's got an amount of damage that it does. It's got a defense and armor value that mitigates a certain amount of damage. It also has a treasure class, which we're going to get into in more detail when we go into the enemies in combat. And then down here, this would be the weakness that it had, either fire, ice, or holy damage, which normally you would deal double damage to the enemy with those types of damage. But in the case of the Mimic, it says NA, not available. He's not weak to any of those types of magic damage. Then it'll have a little text box with an ability. The Mimic's first successful hit deals 1 poison damage. And then it's got some blue text, which is typically kind of like the opposite of the red text. It's kind of like a positive for the player. In this case, it says, you may avoid a battle with a Mimic by discarding 2 rations. So a neat little thing. You could just feed him 2 rations and avoid battle with him altogether. Also, he gives you 1 experience point. So down in the bottom left of the card, that's going to tell you how many experience points you get with the little red stars. And again, those are these gray tokens with the red stars. Those are the experience points. So if you defeated the Mimic, you'd get 1 experience point, and you get to add that over here like so. And again, you spend those to earn skills or spend them to re-roll your dice. And then in the bottom right, it has the initiative of the enemy, which we won't get into too much detail now. We'll wait until we get to the combat section for that. So one important thing to note is that typically whenever you're going through the dungeon deck and you're running into cards like Skirmish, or Ambush. These cards will instruct you to add the current dungeon level to the health of the enemy. So in this case, if we were on level 1, you'd add 1 health to the health of the enemy. When you encounter the Mimic in the treasure deck, you never add the dungeon level to its health. It's always just going to have 5 health. It just has 5 base health. So you don't have to add any health to it. So if you're down on level 5, it's not going to get 5 extra health and be like a crazy strong Mimic. It'll just always be 5. So that's the Mimic that you'll find in the treasure deck. And then there is a trap in the treasure deck, the arrow trap. So it says make an agility check. If you fail, gain 1 poison. And if you remember, we talked about skill checks earlier. You would roll 1d6. You would add the appropriate stat, in this case agility, and you're trying to reach 7 or higher. And if you're unable to do that, you fail. In this case, you would gain 1 poison. So you would add a poison token to your character. And then it says once this trap is resolved, you draw and keep the next card in the treasure deck. So you would discard this card, and then you would draw the next card, and let's say it's not a Mimic. You would draw the next card, and then you would keep that card from the treasure deck. Cool. So those are the other 2 special cards in the treasure deck, the Mimic and the Arrow Trap. But most of the time, guys, you're just going to be finding a bunch of really sweet loot. There's so many different types of loot in the deck, and you're going to be able to experience all that stuff each time you play. You'll have a different experience every time. The next thing I want to talk about here are the trinkets. So you've got some trinkets, guys, and there's a few special ones like the marbles, the wand, and the forgotten note that we're going to look at. And we'll also go over how these trinkets work here. So the trinket cards are very interesting, guys. Here's the marble. We're going to take a look at that. We're also going to take a look at the purple marble. We're also going to take a look at the raw amber, the note, the amethyst, and the wand. So there's some special things that we need to look at, but we're also just going to go over kind of like the layout of a card in general, so you can see how this works. So the way trinkets work is they're kind of like gold. They're sort of like a currency in the game, and most of them also have like secondary functions. Actually, all of them have secondary functions. So it'll have the name of the trinket at the top, a nice little artwork, and then over here, these white circles, that's how much gold the item is worth. So this ivory comb is like the same thing. It's the same as having 3 gold coins. You could spend it as if it were 3 golds at the merchant or back at the Lonely Troll Inn for different trappings. So very, very neat. They act also as gold that you could sell, items that you could barter with and sell. And then down at the bottom in blue text, it'll tell you what the item can be used for. In the case of the ivory comb, it says if you encounter the Delirious Recluse, which is in the encounter deck. So if we go through the encounter deck and we find the Delirious Recluse, right here, we've got the Delirious Recluse card. So if you encounter this person and you've got the ivory comb, if you encounter the Delirious Recluse, you may give her the ivory comb and you will decipher her words without a mind check. So normally you'd have to make a mind check to decipher her words, but if you give her the comb, you don't have to. And then in addition, she will also give you 2 ingredients. So as you can see, if you've got certain trinkets and you encounter certain characters throughout the game, there's certain boons and benefits to be had for having those particular items. And there's other ones that do different things, like the Rusty Key. It's worth 1 gold. You may discard the Rusty Key in order to redraw a new treasure card, but you must take the new result. So anytime you draw a treasure card, it's kind of like you're opening up a chest. You could use the Rusty Key and you could discard the one that you drew and draw a new treasure card instead, but then keep the new result. So there's a bunch of these little trinkets that all do all sorts of different things. And also there's some special ones that I want to go over. So first let's talk about the forgotten note here. The forgotten note, it says the real treasure is friendship. So you don't really want to get this. This thing is kind of just a nuisance and takes up inventory space. It says this item has 0 value, but for some reason it brings you peace. You must spend 2 grit to drop the forgotten note. So if you want to drop the forgotten note, you have to spend 2 grit in order to drop it. Otherwise, it's just sitting in your inventory. And remember, for every 2 trinkets and ingredients you have, it adds 1 weight. So this is kind of like half of an encumbrance just clogging up your inventory, but you could always discard it by spending 2 grit. There's also some other ways to get rid of it. I believe there was an encounter card that I found in one of my runs where, or it might have even been a quest where you're able to offer a trinket at the foot of this altar. So I was like, oh cool, here, take the forgotten note. So I just offered the forgotten note as my trinket. So there are some little creative, crafty ways that you can get rid of this thing too. So, but typically you don't want to get this. And then we've got the marbles. So there are currently 2 marbles in the game, and this is a perfect time to mention that Jason Glover has said that he plans on releasing expansion content for UnderQuest. I believe he said at the pace of about 2 expansions per year, if I remember correctly. So I imagine he's going to add more marbles, different colored marbles to the game. But currently there's a purple marble and a green marble, and the way these work is pretty interesting. As you'll see, they don't have a gold value listed up with the little white circles like the other ones do, like here and here. Also, you notice the forgotten note doesn't either. It's worth nothing. The way that these work is it says, marbles are more valuable in sets. Collect different colored marbles to increase the value of your set. So down below, it'll say number of marbles in the set on the left, and then the value on the right. So if you have 1 marble, it's worth 1 gold. If you have 2 marbles, they're worth 3 gold. If you have 3 marbles, they're worth 5. 4 marbles are worth 7. And if you have 5 marbles, they're worth 9 gold if you sell them. So you get incremental increases in their value depending on how many marbles you have. And again, I imagine there's going to be more marbles released in future expansions for the game. So that's cool. We got more marbles to look forward to, different color marbles to add to the game. So those are the marbles. And then we've also got these amethyst and raw amber gems here, or stones, in the wand shaft. Now, these are very special, guys. So the wand shaft on its own, it doesn't do anything. It says item 2 of 2 required to create the ice wand reward card or the fire wand reward card, and it combines with either the amethyst or the raw amber, which are actually very useful on their own. They're each worth 2 gold apiece. The amethyst says you may discard an amethyst to add 2 ice damage to a single attack. So that's a very cool little ability. And the raw amber says you may discard an amber to add 2 fire damage to a single attack. And then also at the bottom of each of them, raw amber says item 1 of 2 required to create the fire wand reward card, and the amethyst says item 1 of 2 required to create the ice wand reward card. So if you had the amethyst and the wand shaft, you could actually discard both of those cards, go into the reward deck, and you could find the ice wand, which just happens to be right here, and you could add that to your inventory. You could equip it as a weapon, so on and so forth. Same thing if you've got the amber, the raw amber, and the wand. You can combine those together to make the fire wand. And again, you would just go right into the reward deck and find those particular rewards and take them out. So as I mentioned earlier, you never have to shuffle the reward deck because you're never going to draw from it randomly. You'll always be instructed to go into the reward deck and take out a particular reward. So those are all the sort of like special little trinkets from the Trinkets deck right there. All the other ones, like I mentioned, they kind of have their own little abilities and effects that you could use, or you could use them to sell for gold and whatnot. But yeah, very cool addition to the game. So it's like gold with abilities. Very, very cool. I love it. And there's still gold coins as well. So the more the merrier. Now we're going to go over encounters, guys. So we've got this encounter deck here. We'll take a look at that. The way this works is pretty simple. It actually takes the place of the plot cards from Ironhelm. There are some clearing cards here that you're going to find in the dungeon deck. I believe there are 3 of them. Yep, it's those 3. Anytime you find one of these clearing cards, it'll tell you draw and resolve an encounter card, or it might say draw 2 encounter cards and pick one to resolve and place the unused card either to the top or the bottom of the encounter deck. So whenever you resolve one of these clearing cards, if you're used to Ironhelm, a clearing used to say draw and resolve a plot card. Now it says draw and resolve an encounter card. So you would draw an encounter card, you'd flip it over, you'd read the narrative little storyline here, and then in the red text, it'll be sort of like the mechanical element of it where it tells you to, make a skill check or something along those lines, or offer up, rations, or it'll tell you something that you need to do typically, and then either the reward or penalty for succeeding or failing. And of course, a nice little artwork down at the bottom. Once you're done with those, you'll discard them. Also worth mentioning that I don't use discard piles whenever I play the game. I actually just leave the card face up and I put it on the bottom of the corresponding deck. So I know that way, if I ever go all the way through the deck and I get to that face up card, I know it's time to shuffle the deck up again. So just a little tip. That's how I do it. And it kind of keeps everything consolidated, nice and neat. And I don't have a bunch of discard piles all over the place. So that is the encounters. You're going to run into a bunch of different encounters, guys. There's even encounters that will allow you to get quest tokens like the Will of the Wisp. You might be able to get your hands on a nature quest token, or Batros. You might be able to get your hands on a mystic quest token, and so on and so forth. So there's several quests in there that will allow you to get your hands on some quest tokens, which is really, really useful. So that's a secondary way outside of connecting up the icons on the tableau here to get those quest tokens. We already went over rewards. Like I mentioned, you'll be instructed to go into the reward deck to take out certain rewards depending on whether it's an encounter that you run into, if you've got certain trinkets, like I mentioned earlier with the wand and, the amethyst, for example, to get out a certain item, so on and so forth. Now we're going to go over the companions briefly. So those are actually in the reward deck. There are a few companions in the game. I'm not going to spoil all of them, but we'll just go ahead and take a look at one of them here, like the Pigman. So when you have a companion on the playmat, you'd set it over here on your companion slot like so, and you've got this little red D6 to track how much morale it has. So let's go over the stats on the card. You got the name of the card. You've got how much extra damage it's going to add to your attacks in combat. In the case of the Pigman, he had 0. Then you've got this blue shield that'll show how much damage you'll mitigate from attacks from enemies. In the case of the Pigman, it's 0. He's not very helpful on the combat front, but he does add 2 to your encumbrance. So you can carry 2 weight more worth of items. So with the Norshan hanging out with the Pigman, along on his adventure, we'd be able to hold 10, 8 plus the 2. And then it's got an ability on the card. Once per dungeon level, you may spend a ration to avoid a revealed random encounter. So you might reveal one of these encounter cards and you don't really want to do it. You could spend a ration and just avoid it and run away from your problems. And be like, here, eat this, leave me alone, and give him some food, and you and the Pigman go on your merry way. Down here, you're going to see a die. It says 5. So this is how much morale this particular companion has. So you would take the die, this little miniature red die, and you'd set it on 5 on the card. And that's how much morale he has. If the morale of your companion ever reaches 0, they take off. They leave you and they abandon your quest, and you have to discard them back to the reward deck. And then in red next to it, it's going to tell you how the companion is going to lose morale, essentially, what needs to happen for them to lose morale. For the Pigman, it says, the Pigman loses 1 morale every time you take damage. So every time you get hit and you take damage, he loses a morale and it gets ticked down. Now, you can increase the morale of your companion, never above their starting amount. So in the case of the Pigman, 5 is the max morale that he can have. And the way you do that is you look down below the die in the bottom left, and it'll tell you what type of item you need to discard and give to your companion in order to increase their morale. So the Pigman likes rations. So let's say that we had a few rations over here and our Pigman was down to like 3. We could give him 1 ration and bump him up to 4. And if we wanted to make him go all the way up to his maximum of 5, we can give him another ration and then bump him up to 5. And all the other companions will have different items that they'll want. They don't all want rations. So for instance, the Pigman wants rations. We've got Olive here. She wants ingredients. We've got Itis. She wants trinkets. So yeah, each of them is going to have different abilities. They're going to have different amounts of damage and armor that they provide for you, different amounts of encumbrance. They're able to carry more items for you, and different numbers of morale and items that they want in order to increase their morale. And again, as I mentioned earlier, in between every level, you need to spend a ration to feed your companion as well as yourself. And if you don't have enough rations or you choose not to, then the companion is going to take off. They're going to leave and abandon your adventure. Cool. Now let's briefly talk about curses and scourges. I mentioned those earlier. We've got the 5 curse tokens over here, which are these little skull tokens. If you ever acquire all 5 of these skull tokens, you're going to gain a scourge. So if you get all 5 of these curse tokens, you're going to shuffle up the scourge deck and you're going to get a random scourge, and you can just keep this down here in your inventory. You don't want these. They're bad. Like in this case, Amnesia. Use this card to cover up a skill card of your choice. You may not use this skill until the scourge is removed. In this case, if we only had wizardry, boom, we forget how to be a wizard, guys. We forget how to cast spells. We can't use it anymore. And yeah, it would be blocked off until we're able to remove this scourge. Cool. So you don't want to get those. You don't want to get those. And as mentioned earlier, there are several ways that you can remove those curses throughout the game. Also, we're briefly going to talk about morality. That's a big thing in this game, guys, that wasn't as important in Iron Helm. There was a morality system in Iron Helm, but it didn't come into play quite as much as I would personally have liked. It still came into play a little bit, but not as much. That has been fixed in UnderQuest. Jason has made a good effort at fixing that in UnderQuest, and I can tell you for sure after playing the game a few times, it's definitely fixed. It definitely matters more. So we've got a morality tracker over here. Again, depending on what familiar you start the game with, it's going to either give you +1 morality to start or -1 morality. Also, whenever you increase or decrease your morality, your particular familiar will give you a bonus. So if you start with one like the Fink, typically you're going to want to make decisions that make it go down if you get the bonus from them, and vice versa if you get one like the Moon Rabbit, for instance, that gives you positive morality. Whenever you increase your morality, then the effect, the ability of the familiar will go off and you'll get the reward from that. But you don't have to stick strictly to that. Maybe there's going to be certain times in the game that you don't want to do that. You want to deviate from it. And there's even cards in the game that tie straight into this, such as the Archangel card here in the dungeon deck, which says if you have positive morality, you gain health equal to your placement on the morality tracker. So let's say that we were up here at like 3 positive morality. We'd gain 3 health. In this case, boom, yay, hooray, we're back to full health. Let's say we had -3. It says if your morality is in the negative, you lose health equal to your placement on the morality track. So in this case, womp womp, we would lose 3 health right there. So it definitely comes into play. There's other ways that it factors into the game as well, different encounters that you run into and things of that sort. So morality, definitely more integral to the gameplay here in UnderQuest. Also, guys, we're going to go over the, we already went over the incantations. That was actually the next thing on my notes here. See, I told you guys, we got way ahead with the incantations. That was one of the last things we were going to go over. So again, just to reiterate, you need the wizardry skill in order to be able to cast spells. Now, if you're a mind character, or if you're the conjurer who starts with the wizardry skill, obviously it's easier for you to gain access to wizardry, because if you have the skill proficiency of mind, it only costs you 6 experience points to learn a skill within your proficiency, and wizardry is a mind skill, rather than the 10 if it was outside of your skill proficiency. And once you unlock that, then you're able to cast incantations. So without the wizardry skill, you don't have access to this incantation deck. You can't use it at all. You need the wizardry skill. Also, it's important to mention too that there are 3 other skills that kind of go along with this. So they are ice magic, fire magic, and holy magic. And it says on each of these that there is a prerequisite. You must have the wizardry skill to learn this skill. So you have to learn wizardry before you can learn this. There's also other skills in the game that will tell you need to have a particular skill. Like Alchemy says prerequisite, you must have the herbalism skill to learn the skill. So it's kind of like little skill trees that you have to go down in order to learn certain skills, which is really, really neat. And with these skills, the holy magic, for instance, it says that you gain the ability to cast all holy incantations. So you'd go through the deck, you'd take out all the holy incantations, which just so happen to be right here, conveniently. And as you can see, it's got the purple holy symbol on all of those. You can learn all of these now. So not just the level 1, but also the level 2 ones. And in much the same way as wizardry, it'll let you shuffle these up, draw one at random, and then go through the remaining holy spells or incantations and choose one of your choice. And it functions the exact same way with the other 2 types of magic. With fire magic and with ice magic, it'll give you access to those incantations over that way. So that's basically the way that works. And again, you can be a wizard no matter what character you are. Even if you have a skill proficiency of brawn or alchemy, you could still learn the wizardry skill. It's just going to be harder for you to do because it's going to require 10 experience points to go outside of your proficiency for the wizardry skill, and then another 10 if you want to go into holy magic, fire magic, or ice magic. We also went over how you refresh those, just as a refresher, no pun intended. If you ever spend your incantations at the end of the game, if you manage to survive and beat the boss before the end of level 5, when you go back to the Lonely Troll Inn, you get to refresh all of your incantations. So even if you spent all of them, you get to refresh all of them. If you find certain encounters throughout your adventure, like Sortab that we saw earlier, he'll give you the option to refresh your incantations. And then also that 4th hidden ability at the campsite to be able to spend 1 ration and refresh one of your incantations. And obviously you need the wizardry skill to do that. But obviously you would have to have the wizardry skill to have incantations in the first place. So those are the 3 ways that you can do that, guys. Next up, guys, we're getting pretty close to the end here. I appreciate you guys for sticking around. I know this is a little bit of a lengthy video, but there's a lot going on in UnderQuest, and I want to make sure that we cover all of this so that you guys are up to speed and can know how to play the game, every single aspect of the game. So then there is combat, guys. So we're going to go over how combat works, and we need to take a look at the enemies. So we've looked at basically everything so far, guys. We've checked out the rewards, the treasure, the ingredients, the trinkets, the encounters, and the Scourges. We have not yet checked out the enemies and abominations. We took a look at the trappings, how the quest cards work, the skills, all of our other character cards over this way, the dungeon deck. The last things to go over are the enemies, the abominations, and the bosses. So combat is going to be an integral part to the game, and we're going to get into that now. So the way combat works is you're going to have an enemy, obviously. Most of the time, this is going to come from drawing one of 3 cards: the ambush, the skirmish, or the dreaded exalted foe here. So we're going to go over each of these individually. Typically, when you ambush, if you pick this card as the first card, if it comes up as the first card, it says that you catch your foe by surprise and gain the upper hand. Draw an enemy card and add the dungeon level to their health. You get to attack first. So in this case, we would draw an enemy card. We would add the dungeon level to their health. So the trawler here has 5 health. If we were on level 1, we would add 1 to it. And I like to use this enemy health tracker right down this way. And I like to put my enemies here in this little doorway on the mat right here whenever I'm fighting them. And then the enemy health tracker is conveniently right below. So this guy would have 6 health. His base health plus the level that we're on. Cool. And then it's going to tell you that you get to attack first because we're ambushing him. So normally, if you don't resolve the ambush as the first card, each enemy has an initiative number down in the bottom right corner, and I'll teach you how that works in just a moment. But with the ambush card and you resolve it first, we get to attack first. We would just go straight into combat. If we pushed our luck into this card as the second card, it says your foe catches you by surprise and gains the upper hand. Draw an enemy card, add the dungeon level to their health, and then draw an abomination card and add the prefix to this enemy. The enemy attacks first. So in this case, it'd be the same thing. We drew the trawler. He'd have 5 health plus 1 from the dungeon level because we're on dungeon level 1. And then you would draw one of these abomination cards. Now, these abomination cards, when you flip them over, they have a left side of the card and a right side of the card. On the left side of the card is going to be the prefix side on the left side. On the right side is going to be the suffix side of the card. So in this case, it tells you to draw an abomination card and add the prefix to the enemy. So you would slide the suffix side underneath so that only the prefix side is showing. So we would have a thieving trawler here. And then you would read the card. It's going to have a little ability, an effect that the enemy gets, in this case for thieving. If a thieving enemy successfully hits in combat, they steal 1 gold from you. If you do not have gold, they will steal 1 random trinket. These items are lost forever. And then in blue, it'll have a debuff for the enemy. If a thieving enemy misses in combat, you gain 1 gold. And then in yellow or orange down at the bottom, it'll tell you a bonus loot that you get. In this case, if you defeat this enemy, you gain a bonus trinket. Cool. So you'd add that to the enemy, and then you've got a more difficult enemy that you have to fight here in combat. So that's how the ambush card functions. Next up, we've got the skirmish card. So we'll set this back over this way. We'll set this here. Here, let's get a new enemy just to spice it up a little bit. For the skirmish card, it says if we resolve this as the first card, it says you draw your weapon and square off against your foe. Draw an enemy card and add the dungeon level to their health. So we would draw an enemy card. This time we get a goblin. He's got 3 health. We're on level 1. So we'd add 1 to his health. He'd have 4 health. Now, you'll see it doesn't say that you get to attack first or that the enemy gets to attack first. This means that we have to use the initiative of the enemy now to decide who goes first in combat. It's very simple, guys. You're going to take 1d6. You're going to roll it. You're going to add your agility to it. We got 4. Our agility is 2. Make sure that you check your familiar to see if they add any agility or any other items or gear that you might have that might add to your agility. In this case, we don't. Our agility is 2. So we got 2 plus 4 is 6. The initiative of the goblin is 6. You're trying to equal or exceed the initiative of the enemy. In this case, we did. We equaled 6, so we get to attack first. If we would have got 5 or less, let's say we would have rolled a 3, we get 3 plus our 2 agility is 5. Well, that doesn't equal or exceed the initiative, so the goblin would get to attack first in combat. And then if we resolve the skirmish as the second card, it says you draw an enemy card, add the dungeon level to their health, so 4 for the goblin. And then in addition, draw an abomination card and apply the prefix to the enemy. So just like with the abomination or with the ambush card, you would draw it and you would apply the prefix, the left side, to the enemy. And then you would have to roll for initiative to see who attacks first, and you'd be fighting a more difficult enemy. Cool. So that's how the skirmish card works. Now, last but not least, we're going to get another enemy here too. There we go. We're going to get a new abomination card too. Last but not least, guys, the dreaded Exalted Foe. Whether you flip this card as the first or second card, you have to resolve it because it says down at the bottom, you must resolve this card. It says this card must be resolved if revealed. You have to. So it says you draw an enemy card and add the dungeon level to their health. So we're going to draw an enemy card. We've got a spider. He's got 4 health plus 1 from the dungeon level because we're in dungeon level 1. And then it says, in addition, draw 2 abomination cards. Apply the prefix from the first card drawn and the suffix from the second card drawn to the enemy. So you would draw 1 abomination card here. You would apply the prefix, hasty, and then we would draw a second one and apply the suffix. In this case, it's of Dragu. So we've got a hasty spider eye, or a hasty spider of Dragu. So freaking cool, man. There are so many combinations. If I remember correctly, with the, I want to say 18 enemies, and then I believe it's like a 10 card abomination deck. Let's see. 2, 4, 6, 8. Yep, 10. I believe, if I remember correctly, guys, I think Jason said there's like 1,600 plus different enemy combinations that you can run into. 1,600. It is completely insane, guys. So there are so many different combinations of enemies that you can fight in the game. And yeah, they're going to do all sorts of different stuff. Again, we'll take a look at the suffix side. It's very similar to the prefix side, except it doesn't have the blue text. It doesn't get a debuff. So of Dragu, it says, enemies from the plane of Dragu begin combat with 3 extra health and add 1 poison to all their successful hits. And then at the bottom, you get a bonus loot. If you defeat this enemy, you gain an additional experience point. So if we check out the spider, it says before combat, you make an agility check. If you fail, you gain 1 poison. If the spider misses during combat, you gain 1 grit. And he's hasty, so hasty enemies add 3 to their initiative and add 1 damage to all successful hits. So his initiative would go from 6 up to 9, which is going to make it a lot harder for you to attack first in combat. Plus, he's going to deal 1 extra damage on every successful hit. It also says hasty enemies subtract 1 from their defense. In this case, he's got 0 defense, so he would just stay at 0. So it's really like he doesn't even get a debuff. And then if you defeat this enemy, you gain a bonus treasure card. And then again, enemies from the plane of Dragu begin combat with 3 extra health and add 1 poison to all their successful hits. So he would add 3 extra health, go up to 8. So yeah, this guy is insane. His initiative goes up to 9. He deals 1 extra damage in combat, and he poisons you whenever he hits you. So really, really nasty, guys. It makes all the enemies like little mini bosses, essentially, whenever you get the Exalted Foe dungeon card here. So that's how you set them up. Now let's talk about how you actually battle these enemies. So let's go ahead and go through a quick little battle sequence here. I'm going to put these cards back. Let's just say, for instance, that we get into a skirmish. Let's just say that we get into a skirmish. And we choose it as the first card. So we're going to draw an enemy card and add the dungeon level to their health. So let's go ahead and draw an enemy. We got a skeleton. He's got 6 health, and we're on dungeon level 1. So he's going to go up to 7 health. Cool. We have to see who's going to attack first. So he's got 5 initiative. So we're going to roll 1 die and add our agility to it, which is 2. So we roll a 3 plus 2 is 5, and that equals or exceeds the initiative, the 5 initiative of the skeleton. So we get to attack first. So the way this works, guys, is very similar to Iron Helm. It kind of combines the combat mechanic from Iron Helm and Tin Helm, if you're familiar. So before you roll your 2 dice, and essentially, just to let you know how this works, you're going to end up rolling 2 dice and subtracting the lower number from the higher number, and that's how much damage you're going to deal. If you roll doubles, you miss. So yeah. Before you roll your dice, though, you're going to want to decide if you want to spend any grit to deal bonus damage that's printed on your class card. So as a conjurer, if we spend 1 grit, we'll deal 2 bonus damage. 2 grit will deal 4 bonus damage, and 3 grit will allow us to deal 6 bonus damage. Let's just say that we want to just spend 1 grit. We'll spend 1 grit, and we're going to add 2 to our damage. Next, you're going to check your weapon, and you're going to see the stat type that's listed in the bottom right. In the case of the Rusty Dagger, it's Agility and Brawn. And then you want to check your skills and see which one you have a higher number in. So we've got Agility 2 and Brawn 2. So they're the same, but we get +1 Brawn from the Fink, which brings our Brawn up to 3. So we're going to use the Brawn stat for this. So I'm going to take this clear cube, and using this tracker over here, I'm going to set on a 3 so that we can just easily look over here and reference that we do 3 bonus damage whenever we attack. So what we do now is we go ahead and roll. Okay, we got 5 minus 1 is 4, plus 3 is 7. And then we check to see if the enemy has any armor. He does. He's got 1 armor listed on this blue shield. So we would subtract 1 from the 7 and do 6 damage, and we bring him down to 1, like so. Now, if we had any other items or skills or gear that would add damage, or certain weapons might say to add a particular amount of damage on successful hits, you would also factor that into that equation too before you subtract their defense from your damage right there. If the enemy is still alive, they get to retaliate and attack you back, and the way it works is very simple. The enemy will roll. If they roll doubles, they miss. Otherwise, you do the same thing. You subtract the lower number from the higher number. In this case, 6 minus 5 is 1. And then you check their base damage here listed on the card with this little gray pointed star. He deals 1 extra damage. It brings his damage up to 2. Then you'll check and see if you have any armor to mitigate damage. If you did, for instance, in this case, we don't, so we would lose 2 health. So you would take 2 damage to your character. But let's say that we did. Let's say that we had a treasure that gives us some armor here. Let's try to find something. Let's find... I saw scale mail, but I'm looking for the leather armor. There we go. Let's say that we had the leather armor equipped. The leather armor says that subtract 1 damage from all enemy attacks. So what you could do is you could take a clear cube and set it on this tracker. And again, you don't need this tracker. It's just, it makes it more convenient to be able to look over and see exactly what you have. We would know that we block 1 damage from attacks. So in the same scenario, the 6 minus 5 is 1, plus 1 is 2, and then minus 1 for our armor would be 1 damage, and we would have only taken 1 damage instead of 2. And then we would go again, we'd attack, we'd roll, we do 5, plus our 3 is 8, minus his 1 is 7, and he is super dead. Once you kill the enemy, you can go ahead and collect your loot. In the bottom left corner of the card, it'll show these little red stars. That's how much experience points you get. In the case of the skeleton, you're going to get 1 experience point, and all of the enemies have an amount of experience, that's sort of equal to their difficulty level, which is really cool. So the harder enemies are going to be worth more experience points, and the easier enemies are going to reward you with less experience points, which is really neat. It's definitely an upgrade from the way experience worked in Ironhelm. I really, really like that. The next thing you're going to want to do is check their treasure class, which is in this little gold coin. It'll either say A, B, or C, and then you're going to reference the dungeon level that you're on these dungeon level cards. In the case of the skeleton, it says B, treasure class B. So you look here, type B. You'd either get a trinket or an ingredient. You could choose which one. So he would either drop 1 trinket or 1 ingredient in this case. As you go through the levels, the treasure is going to become more lucrative, and you're going to get higher, bigger rewards as you go through each of the levels, like so. Cool. So that's basically how the combat works, guys. Very simple, very similar to Ironhelm, with some little twists on it. And there's a couple other little things that I want to mention about combat here. So there's also magic damage in this game, which is insanely powerful. I was actually talking to Jason about it, giving him my feedback. I was like, dude, magic damage is awesome. It is really, really powerful. And so the way it works is there will be certain weapons that you might acquire. Let's go ahead and look for one now. See if we could find one. Okay, we got the magma ring. That's a good example of one. Let's also grab another one. Let's get a weapon. Let's see. We'll get the shard axe. Let's say that we got the shard axe also. Here, we'll put the rusty dagger back over here in the trapping deck. So I'll give you guys a quick little example of how the magic damage works. So the shard axe says, the shard axe deals 3 ice damage to all successful hits. So if you roll and you don't roll doubles, that is a successful hit. And it's going to deal 3 ice damage. So you could take your little clear cube and place it on the 3 over here on the ice damage. So every time you land a successful hit, you're also going to deal 3 ice damage. But then that's not all, guys. We've also got a magma ring equipped that says whenever you successfully deal damage, you add 1 additional fire damage to your attack, and you gain a bonus 1 health when you take the cook action at the campsite. We're not worried about that. We're more worried about the 1 additional fire damage on successful attacks. So we take a cube, put on the 1 on the fire. So every time we roll and we successfully hit an enemy by rolling anything but doubles, that counts as a successful attack, we're going to factor in all of our normal damage first, and then we would subtract it from the enemy. So let's do it like a quick little representation. Let's say that we're on, let's say we're all the way down on level 5, for instance. Let's say we got all the way down to level 5, and we're fighting this skeleton in the skirmish. So we have to add the dungeon level to his health of 6. So plus 5, he goes up to 11. Let's say that we won the initiative roll and we get to attack first. We're going to go ahead and spend, let's say we spend 2 grit. Okay, we're going to spend 2 grit, so we're going to do an extra 4 damage right here. No, guys, we're going to go all out. We're going to spend 3 grit, and we're going to do 6 bonus damage. So we're going to go ahead and roll. Also, we're using a shard axe, and it has the brawn type. So we got to check our stat. We got 2 brawn plus 1 from the fink, so we're dealing 3 bonus damage. So we're going to roll. Okay, we don't want doubles. In this case, we would have missed. We rolled doubles and misses. Let's go again. Let's go again. Okay, that's a better example. So we would get 5 minus 1 is 4, plus our 3 damage here from our brawn weapon is 7. And then if we had any other weapons that added normal standard damage, we would add that in. In this case, we don't. So we would deal 7 minus 1 is 6. So we would bring him from 11 down to 5. But then that's not it, guys. We would also hit him for 1 fire damage and 3 ice damage, and that is considered magic damage. So there's 3 different types of magic damage: ice, fire, and holy. And they ignore defense for both the enemies and the player. So we would hit him for 1 fire, he'd go down to 4, and then we'd hit him for 3 ice damage, and he would go down to 1. And in this case, the skeleton's weakness is holy. So whenever an enemy is weak to one of the 3 different types of magic damage, fire, ice, or holy, they take double damage from that type of damage. So the skeleton is lucky. If he would have had fire or ice as his weakness, say he had fire, we would have done 2 fire damage instead of 1. Or if he was weak to ice, we would have done 6 ice damage instead of 3. So he hung on just barely with 1 health left right there. So you could see magic damage is insanely powerful. It is unbelievably powerful, especially if the enemy is weak to the type of magic damage that you're dealing, because you'll deal double damage and they can't block it. They can't defend against it. So it is crazy, crazy strong, and it works the same way. Like for the skeleton, he says when the skeleton successfully hits, you take an additional 2 ice damage. So when he hits us, we would take our physical damage, we would factor that in with any armor that we may have, and then we would take 2 ice damage that we can't block. We would take an extra 2 unblockable damage on top of it. And it is worth mentioning, some enemies will have abilities that reduce certain types of magic damage, and there are certain armors and items in the game that will reduce certain types of magic damage. So in those cases, you can kind of mitigate that magic damage, but as a rule of thumb, otherwise, it ignores armor and it goes straight through it. So that's basically it, guys. That is pretty much how the combat in the game works right there. So we went over the enemies. We went over the abominations. Combat is essentially going to work the same way against the bosses. I'm not really going to spoil these for you guys, but we'll look at the names of them at least. We got the Death Warden, the Heart Thief, and the Ashworm. They do different things. Different stats on all those guys. So yeah, I'll let you experience those for yourself whenever you get the game, or I'm sure we'll experience it here on the Game Night YouTube channel, because we're going to be doing plenty of playthroughs of the game coming up here in the near future. So that's pretty much it for the combat. I think the last thing I really wanted to mention about the combat is that you can make bare-handed attacks in combat, much like you can in Iron Helm. In Iron Helm, when you make a bare-handed attack, you just deal 1 base damage, ignoring the enemy's toughness. It works slightly different here in UnderQuest. What you do is, if you don't have a weapon, or if you just want to use a bare-handed attack, what you do is you roll 2 dice. You do what you normally do. If you roll doubles, like in this case, you miss. Or if you roll anything but doubles, like this, 4 minus 2 is 2. That's it. You deal 2 damage. You can't spend grit to add any extra damage. You don't add any damage modifiers from a weapon type because you're not using a weapon. You don't get to add any of your magic damage. You just do the base damage of what you roll. And just like in Iron Helm, it ignores the enemy's toughness. So if the enemy had any armor, like in the case of the skeleton 1, and you hit him with a bare-fisted attack, he wouldn't mitigate one of those damage. You would still deal the full 2 damage to him. So that's worth mentioning there. That's how the unarmed attacks work. It's also worth mentioning, too, that you cannot swap weapons while you're in combat or while you're in the middle of resolving another card. You have to be in between cards in order to swap items and weapons between your inventory slots. Same thing with armor and whatnot, or offhand items. The only exception to this rule is that if your weapon were to break or you lose your weapon in combat, if you had another weapon in your inventory, like in this case, if our shard axe got broken somehow, you can immediately equip the rusty dagger. Also, if you happen to have a weapon in your offhand somehow, you could also immediately swap it over to your primary hand, even in combat, if you lose the weapon. So that's the only exception to that rule right there. And I think that basically covers all of the rules for combat. So now, guys, we're going to go into ending the game. How do you end the game? So the end of the game is going to happen if you defeat the final boss before you reach the end of level 5. And of course, reaching the end of the level is when you go through the entire 18 card dungeon deck here, and all of them have been laid out on the tableau, and the others are in the discard pile. So you need to get through all 6 of your quests and defeat the final boss in order to beat the game before you reach the end of level 5. The other ways to lose the game is if your HP reaches 0, of course. If you lose all of your health, you lose the game. If your poison ever equals or exceeds your HP, you lose the game, as I mentioned earlier. There are also certain cards in the encounter deck, for instance, like there's one called, I think it's All-Seeing Eye or Evil Eye. Let's see if we could find that. Yeah, here we go. All-Seeing Eye. I'm not gonna read the whole synopsis of the card here, but it does say if you end up rolling a -4 or lower, you immediately die. So there are ways to just immediately die in the game, which is pretty crazy. And then lastly, again, if you run out of time and you don't beat the boss before the end of level 5, you lose the game that way. But if you win the game, guys, if you win by getting all the way through and defeating the boss and completing all your quests and defeating the boss before the end of level 5, you get a reward. You actually get 2 rewards to choose from. You can either get a treasure, 2 gold, and 2 ingredients cards, which you would draw a treasure. You get yourself 2 gold tokens, and you draw 2 ingredients cards to add to your inventory. Of course, if you have the encumbrance to hold them, you can hang on to them, and if you don't, you could drop whatever you want, swap them out with other items, or just drop them if you don't want them. And the other reward that you can get if you defeat the game is you can increase one of your stats, agility, brawn, or mind, by 1, up to a maximum of 4. So you're going to be able to continue your adventure. So it's going to be very worth your while to increase your stats, to make certain skill checks easier on the subsequent runs. And it's just a cool way to, kind of level up your character. You literally get to increase one of your 3 stats of agility, brawn, or mind, again, up to a maximum of 4 base stats. So like if you start with 2 brawn, you can add a point if you beat the game to brawn. If you win again, you could add another point. Even though you're getting +1 from the Fink, that doesn't count toward your base stats. So your base stats printed on your race card, you can go up to a maximum of 4. So if you ended up increasing your brawn up to 4, and then you got +1 from your Fink, you'd have 5 brawn, which is completely crazy. Very, very cool. So that's going to bring me to the final bit of the tutorial here, guys, is continuing your adventure. So you can actually continue your adventure and go to the Lonely Troll Inn in between dungeons and in between adventures here. And when you do so, all of your HP and your grit is going to be replenished. So all of your HP would get replenished. You get healed. All of your grit would get replenished as well. Any poison tokens that you have get completely removed, like so. You can just completely heal all of your poison. Also, there is a cleric at the Lonely Troll named Scarla, and she will allow you to pay her 1 gold to remove a curse. So let's say we had a couple of curse tokens on us. We could pay her 2 gold if we wanted to remove these 2 curse tokens, 1 gold per curse token. Also, if you're unfortunate enough to have a Scourge card, you can pay her 3 gold to remove a Scourge. And you can do that as many times as you want for as many Scourges that you have, as long as you have the gold to afford it and pay for it. Cool. So that's another thing that you could do. So yeah, it's nasty to get the Scourges, but it's good that there is a way that you can potentially get rid of them at the Lonely Troll. Also, you can sell treasure and trappings or 2 ingredients for 1 gold to the merchant Calm at the Lonely Troll Inn, who is this guy on the back of the Trappings card. So any Trappings cards or treasure cards that you have, or every 2 ingredients that you have right here, you can sell those to Calm for 1 gold each. So if we didn't want the magma ring, we could sell it to him for 1 gold. You would ignore the cost on the card here. You would sell that to him for 1 gold. Same thing if we had 2 ingredients. You could sell those to him for 1 gold as well. Cool. Also, he sells trappings and rations for 1 gold each. So you can go through the trappings deck. The trappings are going to be worth, different amounts of money. Let's see if we can get another one like the fur cloak. You could buy it from him for 2 gold if you wanted to. And he's also got rations available, some food, and you could buy those for 1 gold each. And then lastly, guys, whenever you continue your adventure and you go on to another dungeon, you're going to shuffle up the dungeon deck. You're going to set up the game just like you would normally. You keep all your gear and all your incantations. Also, yeah, you would refresh your incantations too if you had those at the Lonely Troll. You keep all your skills and all of that stuff. And then you refresh this, or you reshuffle this. Also, you're going to keep your morality tracker where it is as well. That's not going to change. And then before you go into the next level, at the beginning of every level, when you shuffle up the dungeon deck, you're randomly going to discard 2 cards off to the side. So what this is going to do is it's going to make it to where you don't know which 2 cards got discarded. So you don't know what's actually in the dungeon deck now. Whereas before, you at least got some idea of what might be in there. Now there's going to be 2 cards missing every time. And now you're only going to get 8 choices to go through. So it's going to make it harder to earn your quest tokens, and it's going to speed up the game a little bit. So you have even less time to get through the game and defeat the boss and complete your quest and defeat the boss before the end of level 5. And there it is, guys. There it is, dudes. That is all of it in a nutshell. I did say that I was going to go through like a level or 2 of the game to kind of show you guys. I know this video is very, very long. So if you feel like you got the gist of it at this point, and you just want to call it there, I don't blame you. You pretty much know how to play the game now, guys. We have covered every single aspect of the game in detail. But just for fun, we're just going to go through maybe like 1 or 2 cards here in the deck. We'll keep these over here since we actually had those. We'll just go through like 1 or 2 cards in the deck so that you guys can kind of see, you know, how the game plays out a little bit. I also had the rusty dagger as my weapon here. Nice. Cool. All right. So yeah, let's go ahead and just do a couple little, you know, runs through some rooms here and see how some of this stuff plays out. But thank you guys so much for being here, man, and checking out the video. Like I said in the beginning, there's going to be a crowd sale up for this on November 6th tomorrow, and I'll have links down in the description of this video. So please go click on those, and it'll bring you straight to the crowd sale page. So just briefly, let's go ahead and shuffle up the deck. And we're going to go through just a couple rooms here so you guys can kind of see what the game is like. So we got the Archangel. You are blinded by a flash of light that quickly fades. After your eyes adjust, you are startled to see the form of a beautiful woman with large wings. She has been sent to judge your deeds. If you have positive morality, gain health equal to your placement on the morality tracker. If your morality is in the negative, which it is for us, we would lose health. So we would lose 1 health. So you know what? I'm going to push my luck, guys. So we would discard this card. We would push our luck into the next one, and we found the Merchant. Deep in the dungeon seems like a strange place to set up shop, but who are you to question his sanity? Take any number of the following actions. So we could buy to see what the Merchant has for sale. You draw 2 treasure cards and 3 ingredient cards. So we would draw the top 2 treasure cards. We would draw 3 ingredient cards. And we would have all these available to buy. The treasure cards are going to be worth the gold printed on them. That's how much you have to spend. Ingredients cards cost 1 gold apiece. And you can also sell. The merchant will buy any treasures or trappings cards for 1 gold, and he'll also pay 1 gold for any 2 ingredients. Cool. In this case, we don't really have too much to sell. We got a little bit of gold on us. We don't have enough to buy the leather armor or the magma ring. So you know what? We'll say in this case, we'll give him 2 gold just so you guys can kind of see how some of this stuff plays out. We'll pay him 2 gold, and we're going to buy a couple of these ingredients. I'm going to buy the Harpy Fig and the Serpent's Eye with the goal of maybe being able to combine these to get some grit later on in our adventure. So we'd add those to our inventory. We have 2 ingredients here, so that weighs 1. So that's going to bump up our encumbrance. So we've got 1, 2, 3. So yeah, we're at 3 encumbrance now. And we're going to say so long to the merchant, and he can keep the rest of his stuff. So I'm going to discard this face up on the bottoms of these decks here. You can do discard piles if you want, but as I mentioned earlier, I like to discard them face up. That way when I get all the way through the deck, I just shuffle them up again. So then we would take the merchant card, since we resolved it, place it out here on the tableau, and then continue with our adventure. So we'll go through another room or 2 for you guys. We got an ambush here. You catch your foe by surprise and gain the upper hand. Let's do it, guys. Let's ambush them. Draw an enemy card and add the dungeon level to their health. You get to attack first. So we would draw an enemy card. Let's get a different one. Let's shuffle up because we saw the skeleton a few times. Let's see if we can get a random one here. Okay, we got an orc. So he's got 7 health. We would be on level 1 of the dungeon starting our adventure here. We don't want to be down on level 5. So he's going to get 7 plus 1 is 8 health. And since we're ambushing him, we get to attack first. So we get to ignore his initiative and attack first. So he's got 8 health. We're using a dagger with brawn. We get plus 1 brawn to our 2 brawn. So we're going to be doing 3 bonus damage. So let's put that there. We got all of our grit here. I'm going to spend 2 grit. So we're going to do 4 bonus damage if we successfully hit. So let's go ahead and roll. I also want to mention this too. If you're still here, you're in luck, because I forgot to mention this little important piece of information, kind of an obscure little rule, and I clarified with Jason. If an enemy attacks you and they don't roll doubles, even if your armor brings all their damage down to 0, it's still considered a successful hit, and any abilities that they have that will trigger when they successfully hit you will still trigger. They need to roll doubles for it to be considered a miss. So that's an important little rule. So we're going to go ahead and attack the orc. And we got 5 minus 3 is 2, plus our 4 bonus damage since we spent 2 grit, so that's 6. And then plus 3 extra damage from the brawn stat from our weapon here. So that is 9. Minus 1 from his armor here is 8 damage, and he's got 8 health. And we just took the orc down in 1 shot, guys. Let's freaking go. It paid to spend some grit and take him down. Cool. Oh, also it says if your attack misses against an orc, their next hit deals 3 extra damage. So that would have been bad. And in blue, it says that you can avoid a battle with an orc by discarding 2 trinkets. I should have read that first, but anyway, we took him down, so that's good. So we're going to get 1 experience point. So at this point in the game, we wouldn't actually have any experience points. So we would gain 1 experience point. And then also, we would get treasure class B. So we check the level card, 1 trinket, or 1 ingredient. Let's go ahead and grab a trinket, guys. Let's see if we can get some kind of cool trinket here. We got the ancient coin. It's worth 1 gold, and it says if Borko is your companion, you may trade the ancient coin with him for a random treasure card. So if we ever had Borko as our companion, we can give him this ancient coin, and then he would give us a random treasure card. But we'll hang on to it for now. And it doesn't weigh anything on its own because we've got 3 either ingredients or trinkets, and every 2 of them weighs 1. So we don't have to increase our encumbrance just yet. If we were to pick up 1 more trinket or 1 more ingredient, then we would have to increase our encumbrance. Okay, cool, guys. That is it for the orcs, and then the orc would go on the bottom of the enemy deck. We would discard this face down card over this way, and then we put the ambush card on the tableau. We'll place it here, and we'll go through 1 more room, guys, before we call it a day. Let's go ahead and flip the next card. And we've got a treasure chest here. I really want to combine a symbol so that we can get a quest token. So normally I would resolve this, but let's go ahead for fun and just push our luck and see what we push into. We push into the clearing. Here we go, guys. Anything can happen in a clearing. Draw and resolve a plot card. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the second one. Draw 2 encounters. It says fortune finds those who take risks. So that's important to note, guys. I almost messed up. When you push into a card and it's the second card, you got to do the number 2 down here. So fortune tells those who take risks. Draw 2 encounter cards and pick 1 to resolve. Place the unused card either on the top or the bottom of the encounter deck. So we're going to draw 2 encounters. We've got the cow and we've got under pressure. Let's go to the cow, and we could put this either on the top or the bottom of the deck. We'll just say that we'll put it on the top, and maybe we'll experience that in a little bit. So we've got the cow. Yep, that's a cow, all right. What an odd place for her to live. The cow is not ordinary in nature and is roughly half the size of the cows back home. She stares at you with her huge, gentle eyes. Choose an option below. We can milk the cow, make an agility check, and if you fail, you lose 1 health, and if you succeed, you gain 1 ration. Or we can charm the cow, make a mind check. If you fail, you lose 1 health and 1 grit. If you succeed, you gain the Mildred reward card. So we'd be able to get Mildred the cow as our companion from the reward deck. And unfortunately, our mind stat is awful, guys, but we're going to try to make that check anyway. So we're going to try to charm the cow, make a mind check. So again, every time you make a skill check, you're trying to roll 7. Remember, lucky number 7. So we're going to roll 1 die and add our mind to it of 1. We need a 6, guys. Right here. We got it, dudes. No way. Let's go. Let's freaking go, guys. Awesome. So if you succeed, gain the Mildred reward card. Dude, this is a perfect little example at the end of the video here, guys. I'm so glad that it's working out this way. Cool, man. So we get Mildred, guys. Let's go. So we get the Mildred reward card. It's a companion. She does 0 extra damage in combat for us. She doesn't block any extra damage, but she allows us to hold 3 more items worth of weight. So now with our 8 from our Norshan and 3 from Mildred, we can hold 11 items worth of weight. And it says, or 11 weight worth of items, rather. It says Mildred produces milk at the end of each dungeon level, gaining you 1 ration. That's so cool. So we have to feed the companion at the end of every dungeon level. So she basically feeds herself because she'll give us a ration and we can feed it to her if we wanted to, or we can have it for ourselves. She says 6 for her morale here. So we would set the 6 on her. And Mildred loses 1 morale each time you resolve combat. Ooh, so every time we resolve a combat, she's going to lose a morale, but we can increase her morale by 1 for each ration that we give her. So we would put Mildred over here. We'd put the 6 on her like so. And there we go, guys. We got a little companion right there. Very, very cool. Then we would take this card, put it on the bottom of the encounter deck or discard it, either way you want to do it. And then we can place the clearing card either on the right side or the left side of the tableau. Over here is not going to create a symbol, but if we place it over here, it creates a nature symbol and we get a nature quest token. We add that here, and that's one of the tokens that we need in order to complete our quest over this way. So there it is, guys. If we were able to get the other tokens that we need, the Mystic quest token and the Combat quest token, those are the 3 tokens we need. We would just discard those and put those back on their respective stacks here. Then we would read the bottom of the card. After a few close calls, you find your way into a large, dusty room full of barrels and crates. Zola is camped out in a dark corner and rises to meet you. She speaks hurriedly of a place within the dungeon that should have clues for your mission. She hands you a ration, gain 1 ration, and then as quickly as she spoke, she gathers her things and is off into the darkness. So we would gain a ration, then you would put this card either in a discard pile or on the bottom of the deck. You'd flip your next quest, and then you would read the top portion of the quest, and then you're trying to get these 3 quest tokens in order to go through the quest. And again, you're trying to get through all 6 of them and then fight the boss and beat the game before time runs out, before you lose all of your health, before you die to a random encounter, or before poison catches up to you and you die to poison. And that is it, guys. That is how to play UnderQuest. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, man. Again, I know it's a long one, but there is a lot in this game. This game is jam-packed with content, and I found it important to really go into detail and explain all of it in detail to you guys so that there's no questions that you may have. But if you do have questions, because I'm bound to maybe have missed something here or there, or maybe something wasn't crystal clear, leave those questions as a comment down below the video, and either I or Jason, I'm sure, will be down there reading your comments as well. And we'll do our best to help you guys out with any questions that you might have. Of course, Jason he's the man. He made the game, so he's going to be the one to go to. So put all your comments down below, but I'll do my best as well to try to help out and answer any questions that I can. So again, guys, to reiterate, the crowd sale for UnderQuest is going live tomorrow, November 6th, dudes. So don't wait, dudes. Everybody that gets on the crowd sale is going to get discounts for different like marks that we get to, so or that Jason gets to rather. So if there's 10 sales, the price goes down. If there's 20, it goes down, so on and so forth. So the more copies of the game that sell, the more you guys save money. Same thing with the playmats. You can save money on the playmats and get those at a big discount, and also the player character sheets. Those are going to be discounted as well for the more of those that get sold also. So yeah, guys, get excited, guys. Get hyped. UnderQuest is finally here. Huge, massive shout out to Jason Glover. Thank you, dude, so very much for your kindness and generosity. Thank you so much for providing me with this early copy of UnderQuest and the playmats to check out and share with the community here on the Game Night YouTube channel. It's absolutely my pleasure to share this. I know to some extent how much hard work and time and effort goes into creating a game. I've never made a game nearly at the scope of UnderQuest. I've just done Mint Tin games, and those were already, a pretty daunting task. So I have a firsthand experience and can really truly appreciate how much effort and work must have went into this. And I know it's a labor of love, and we truly appreciate it. So thank you, Jason Glover, dude. We really appreciate you, man. Thank you for everything that you do and providing this cool little solo gaming community with amazing games. And now we've got UnderQuest, guys. Probably the best one yet, dude. Definitely the best one yet, in my opinion. I absolutely love the game, and I know you guys will too. So get on that crowd sale, guys. November 6th, tomorrow. Be sure to go tomorrow. You can even head down to the description of this video right now and click the link in the description. It'll take you straight to the crowd sale page, and you can click the blue remind me button up at the top of the page, and you'll get an email reminding you when the crowd sale goes live tomorrow. So be sure to go do that. And thank you guys so much for watching, man. If you gained value out of this video, if you're excited for UnderQuest and you enjoyed this, man, be sure to hit that thumbs up like button down below. Hit the red subscribe button to sub to the channel, and click the bell so you can stay notified every time I upload brand new videos. And I'm going to have a ton of UnderQuest playthrough videos coming up, guys. So many UnderQuest playthroughs. So if you're excited for that and you want some UnderQuest content and playthroughs, the Game Night YouTube channel is the place to get it, guys. So be here for that, and be sure to subscribe and click that bell. Thank you guys so much for watching, man. This is a long one. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Love all you guys to death. Get hyped with me for UnderQuest, guys. I'm so hyped, and I hope you guys are excited too. And until the next one, guys, have a good one, and I'll see you guys in the next video.